Hello and welcome everyone once again to the Movie Battleground. I am once again your host. I don't know why, but I am Noah McCausland, or otherwise known as Mick Levin. Um, and I get to do a little something special today. I get to bring you guys a title match between two people I hope you guys know. Like, if you don't, why are you even here? But one of these competitors but might be getting some flack since he technically runs the show or whatnot. But we'll find out. We'll find out. We're just gonna go ahead and bring him in right now. Maybe if he's there, Aaron. We're gonna bring out Aaron Connole with a record of 4-1, one knockout. How you feeling today, Aaron?
I'm good. I'm here. I know that this is very redundant in a dark night with light on to have glasses on, and I admit this joke is in poor taste, but I thought about it earlier, so I'm going to run with it. But I'm wearing sunglasses right now because, like a certain other somebody who is fighting a big battle, I am not going to let the man who's beaten me one or two times see my eyes until this is all over. And again, that might be in poor taste. If this somehow made it into the video, that's just because I'm a dick. No, listen. Henry's excellent. I mean, Joe was the guy who literally hadn't been beaten in a first run, and then the show ended, and then he made a second run and wasn't beaten. That's English. And Henry beat him. Uh, in all of Movie Battleground history, as I said when I won against Jay, I have lost 3 times. 2 of them have been to Henry. So I'm the definition of an underdog tonight. However, I have one thing that most people don't when they're in this position. I don't fucking care if I win or lose, truthfully. I don't care. If I win, then I get to beat Henry, and that'll feel really good. And if I lose, it's probably better for the show if the guy who's literally labeled creative director at the end of every episode doesn't have the title. So be what it may, let's see what happens.
Well, you say that two of your 3 losses have been against Henry, but there's another interesting statistic there where Jay, who you have beat previously, is the only person to beat Henry. So if you do some comparative math right there for all my math nerds, you you should be able to beat Henry. I guess maybe. Who knows? We'll see. We'll find out. Well, we're gonna go back, drop you to the back, and bring forth your competitor for tonight. You guys all know him, Mr. Henry Confidential, the champion with a record of 6-1, 2 knockouts. A very, very, very impressive record. Henry, how are you doing today, man?
I'm good. It's a lot of fun. I've been doing fan league stuff, YouTube, for almost 6 years now at this point, and this is my first ever championship. I've made a few championships, but didn't quite make the finals, whether it's trivia or debate. So it's one of those things where it feels good to finally showcase, my knowledge and my abilities. And yeah, Aaron, like Aaron said, we have a history. That doesn't mean anything to me. I'm still going to prepare like always. Just going into my match against Joe, I told Aaron multiple times behind the scenes, I'm like, I know how to beat Joe, but that doesn't mean I didn't prepare like I would against anybody. I didn't take him lightly by any means. I've had a few opponents that on paper might have been easier, whether it been you as a rookie who, minimal experience, or just other competitors where you never know, what the situation is. But I prepare the same no matter what, because my mind thinks about movies and debate, at the highest level. So, the fact that I'm preparing for Aaron shows him respect, despite the fact that I have 2 wins over him. He's great. He did, in fact, beat Jay. Little caveat, Jay beat me because of some behind-the-scenes reasons. We're not going to get into that again. But, yeah, so I was actually kind of hoping it was going to be Jay so I can redeem myself and kick the shit out of him. But, I'm going to have a friendly match against Aaron, and, let's see what happens.
Well, you're talking about those that win against Joe and preparing at that. But you've got to feel pretty confident because not only are you the champion, but that championship came from ending Joe's reign, which was a 8 or 9 game unbeaten streak.
Yeah.
So like on top of being a champion right now, that also has to make you feel pretty good as you ended a champion streak of.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, like I said, the way that my mind works in terms of debate, like I know I can find people's weaknesses and I can, think not only like myself, but think like my other player, but also think like the judges. And the way that I'm able to combine it all usually correlates in a full package. So unless you find me in a last minute rescheduling a match, Jay, and just yell louder, then the odds of you, getting to me, it's going to be tough. So Aaron, if he does win, I don't look at anyone lightly. Obviously, he's great. If he does win, he's definitely going to earn it. And, congratulations to him in advance. And otherwise, thank you for your time. We'll see what happens.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Henry. We're going to go and drop it back, and we're going to talk about the rules, which if you're here, I'm pretty sure you guys know the rules already. But again, that's not right. It says the first of 3 points wins the match, but it's actually going to be a best of seven.
The banners aren't right. Sorry about that. I don't make those. We love you, Lillian Poss. Thank you.
That's the voice of God back there. Anyway, Movie Battleground is a best of 7.
I'll play the video. You can talk.
For it's a great day already. It's a best of 7 because this is a championship match, and it's going to be to the first 4 points is going to win. Each round of debate is worth 1 point. If one competitor earns the first 4 points in a row, it's going to be considered a victory by knockout. English is my first language, I promise. Rounds 5 and 6 are going to be your blind rounds, which means that me and Jacob Papa West have created questions that they have no idea about, and we're going to ask them, and they're going to have to answer questions about them with no preparation beforehand. At the end of that, if there's still a draw, then we're going to go into the tiebreaker speed round, which again, I've created some questions for that. There's actually some really fun. So I'm personally hoping that they go to the speed rounds, but we'll find out. Rounds 1 through 4, competitors were given the questions ahead of the match, and we have had time to prep their answers. The first stage of the question is the 60-second opening. The second stage of the question is going to be the 2-minute expansion or rebuttal, which are going to expand upon their previous argument. The third stage of a question is going to be the 4-minute open debate discussion, which sometimes a lot of heat, a lot of passion can fly, and a lot of clashing of words and everything will happen. And that fourth stage is going to be the 60-second closing, where they're going to finally close out their argument and everything. After that, the 3 judges will be brought on screen, during which they'll be given their judgment on who won the round for them in as clear and as concise as they can put it. And our 3 judges, we're going to thank Jen. We're also going to thank Mr. Allen and Mr. Ryan Payne in the background for helping us out and making it so that I don't have to judge and I can focus on making this somewhat entertaining. But that's going to be up to those 2, actually. All that being said, considering he's the champion, Henry is the favorite for this match, and he chose to go first on all the even questions. So his first question, Aaron, is going to go first. And there are some pretty good comedies in the 90s coming out, and there's a specific actor who is in a good amount of those, maybe some dramas and some serious movies. But me and Papa West thought it was interesting. What 90s comedy would be most improved if it starred Robin Williams? And boy, these competitors have some good answers. So we're going to get into that and let them answer it. So we're going to go first to you, Aaron. Whenever you start speaking, I'll give you 3 seconds. And you can answer the question. This is going great.
All good, man. All good. About as smooth as I would probably have it. All right. Okay, so the key word with this question is improved. It's not making it good. It's not making it great. It is what will simply improve the movie. Because I've picked an absolutely god-awful movie that would take way more than an acting change to make good. But I think putting Williams as the lead in this movie would make it a better movie. And that is Super Mario Brothers, the movie. This is one of the original video game adaptations of one of the biggest video games of all time. It came out in 1993. And again, there's a plentiful of things that are wrong with this movie, but one of them, and one of the big ones, is Bob Hoskins and his portrayal of Mario. Both the stuff that happened on screen and all the issues that happened behind the scenes, that were a lot of which directly related to Bob Hoskins and his attitude towards the film. I think if you swapped him out for Robin Williams, who was much more inclined to be in a movie like this at that point in time, it wouldn't make it good, but it would improve it. And that's my time.
Thank you very much, Aaron. We're going to go ahead and go over to Mr. Henry, confidential champion himself. I'm sure that name is not going to stick. Anyway, go ahead and start speaking, and your timer will start clicking.
All right. So when you think of Robin Williams in the 90s, specifically in the comedy genre, you think of essentially what Robin Williams brings to the table, and you look at his filmography, especially during the stretch of the 90s. And the movie I chose that, I agree is going to improve is actually going to be Jack Frost. The reason I chose this movie is because if you look on paper of what Jack Frost is supposed to be, it's a family comedy that deals with father dynamics, which deals with fantasy elements. It deals with slapstick, and it deals with just general comedy and seasonal stuff. So the fact that if you replace Michael Keaton with Robin Williams, you'll hands down make it a better movie, because it just fits exactly what Robin Williams does. It's actually appalling that Robin Williams was not the character for this movie. Michael Keaton was just completely miscast. If you look at Michael Keaton's filmography in the 90s, it just didn't even fit that. It was kind of random. Probably Robin Williams was busy, and that's why he was not as the lead in Jack Frost.
And time. Interesting first minutes there. We're going to go back to Aaron for your 2 minutes. I promise you'll get your 2 seconds whenever you start speaking.
It's all good. It's the king of fucking up getting the timer right. It's okay. I can take it. Okay, so we'll start with Super Mario Brothers. Bob Hoskins is horribly miscast in Super Mario Brothers. For starters, if you look at the actual production of the film, after doing kids' films in Roger Rabbit and Hook, he was actually wholly against the idea of doing a film for kids again, and he was not ready to sign on to this movie until somebody at the studio gave him control over the script. Now, the script in which Bob Hoskins demanded rewrites in included scenes that would have included what I can only describe as strippers in a Mario film, among other more adult things that would have sent the movie in a very other weird different direction. However, at some point, Disney took on distribution rights for the film and took that control away from him and said, no, this is not what Mario is. This is not kid friendly. We got to change that. Following that, he became basically a miserable git, and is one of the big reasons that filming on this movie was a horrible experience for everyone. Now, moving on to the actual performance, Robin Williams' biggest strengths as an actor are the energy he brings, both in his voice and his physical acting. As Mario, I think he could, deliver a voice that is far closer to the real Mario voice than the Italian uncle stereotype that Hoskins is using in the film. I also think he'd be able to bring a physical energy that could enhance the performance and would match the more youthful, energetic performance that Leguizamo brings as Luigi, versus Hoskins, who honestly looked wildly out of shape. And that is saying something, considering Mario is a bigger character. Hoskins just didn't look fit to be there. Now, as Henry said, Robin Williams was known for making films with families. In fact, in the 1990s, from the years 91 to 97, he made 8 films: Hook, Ferngully, Aladdin, the Aladdin sequel, Toys, Mrs. Doubtfire, Jumanji, and Flubber, all of which were kid-related films that he was the star in. He took pride in entertaining children, and I think putting him in Mario would have given the movie someone that could match the performance needed for this character, and somebody who would have actually enjoyed being there and given it his all, despite the other issues that were happening with this movie.
And time. Whole lot of info. I should probably stop the timer. Whole lot of info going on in that 2-minute debate. I hope you got all of that, judges, because we're going right back over to Mr. Henry. I think I'm going to call you that for the rest of the night, Mr. Henry. We got 4 seconds on top of that whenever you start speaking.
So on top of what Aaron said for Robin Williams' 90s resume, you also have Awakenings, Dead Again, The Fisher King, and Jack, which involve both mental health and family dynamics, which is a very important sub plot to Jack Frost, and it really factors into just the dynamic between him and his kid, because it just showcases the fact that he passed away and he's dead, and you need to handle that both as your own self reflection, but as well as your dealing with it with the son. So having Robin Williams be able to combine all of that just showcases that is just well within his wheelhouse. If you actually look at Michael Keaton's filmography within the 90s, you take out the two Batman films, which 89 is, close enough, but you take out the two Batman films and side performances in Jackie Brown and Out of Sight, you really don't have anything at all that is good, let alone within the family genre. So it is completely a miscast for Michael Keaton. Obviously, in hindsight, you look at Michael Keaton's career now, you're like, oh yeah, that should have worked. But if you actually look specifically in the 90s, it was just completely out of it. So you replace Robin Williams there, like Aaron mentioned, performances like Aladdin, Mrs. Doubtfire, and Hook, and it showcases both the family dynamic of the relationship between him and his kid, but also the wacky antics, the slapstick that he can provide that you actually see in the film, of the combining of the CGI and the different effects that you have with him as the snowman. Whereas if you look at Super Mario Brothers, the great thing about that movie, the quote unquote so bad it's good, is the relationship between Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo. The fact that he is the grumpy old man is actually what elevates that movie, the relationship of the two brothers, of John Leguizamo kind of being in the love interest, and Bob Hoskins, Mario, actually being the older brother and giving him, tips and hints, and actually, having that relationship. That's actually what elevates it. I agree, the script is the problem with Super Mario Brothers, but even if you replace Robin Williams, that doesn't replace the script. So the movie is still going to be bad. So maybe it improves it a smidge, but him and Jack Frost improves it tenfold.
And time. Without any fluff, we're going to go right back into the 4-minute debate where these two are going to go right back at it. And based off these answers, I don't think there's going to be too much passion going on, but we'll see. Whenever one of you starts speaking, I'll start the timer.
Okay, so I'm just gonna jump right into it. Yeah, Jack Frost is a bad movie. So is my movie. I think we can both acknowledge that these are bad movies. But here's the thing. I think one of the few things that actually does work about Jack Frost is Michael Keaton. For starters, the character of Jack Frost is supposed to be a budding rock band singer who is on the precipice of reaching real success, and that's why the division within his family is created, because he's not there. There's nothing about Robin Williams that screams cool enough to be a rock singer, whereas I think Keaton pulls that off the best he can. Also, when we talk about Williams' strengths as a performer, as I said, it's the mix of his vocal energy and what he brings in the performance of how he treats the character, and the physical aspect of it. That puppet mixed with that CGI is a butt ugly combination, and I think if you put Robin in it, because it can't match the physical level that his voice goes to, he's actually going to come off like he's overacting a lot of those comedic scenes, not acting it the way it needs to be. Keaton's sarcastic mannerisms fit more than Robin Williams' over-the-top circus act.
See, the difference is that is like you just said that Robin Williams wouldn't be able to fit in that. But if you look at Mrs. Doubtfire, the reason that he had his family issues with both his wife and his kids is the fact that he's a voice actor and he's overworking and he's not being a good father. So it kind of correlates really well. But also similar in The Fisher King, he plays a homeless man. So the fact he can showcase that he doesn't always have to do the over-the-top comedy. So he would be able to mesh that very well. Like I said, the relationship between John Leguizamo and Bob Hoskins is fantastic, because the grumpy old man, if, like you said, that if Robin was went in there, he was going to do the voice, and that would actually be distracting and over the top from the actual, the family dynamic that they had. It would make it satire and goofy. You wouldn't even be able to take it seriously. Granted, it's bad, it's a terrible script, but the fact that they were actually going for a serious approach in the movie and not a over the top fantastical thing, in terms of super goofy and cheesy.
But I would argue that, if anything, the relationship between Mario and Luigi being taken almost more serious in the way they're portraying it actually makes it stand out in the movie in a bad way, because the rest of that movie is fucking ridiculous. You have Dennis Hopper playing a human version of Bowser with the weird spiky hair, and you have what they turn Toad into and how they portray the Goombas and the weird steampunk elements that have been added to this film. The movie already is kind of this weird hodgepodge of elements and script rewrites and things being removed. And I think the fact that these two actors attempted to actually take this seriously drags the film down more. Whereas if Williams were in there and he were encouraging Leguizamo, who can do goofy, to just go for it and try and match the film in that sense, I think it would improve it more than the relationships that's there shows. I also want to quickly just rebut on your point of Williams. The fact that in Mrs. Doubtfire, again, he's a voice actor, which is something that Williams does in real life. There's nothing about Williams that screams being able to portray a rocker. I don't think he could portray that convincingly. Also, yes, Williams's comedic elements works in a lot of different films, but I'm going to give you an example of one where he was in where it's a 3D animated film and he actually doesn't work, and that's Happy Feet. Despite the fact that he voices 3+ characters and is the biggest element of that film, except for Elijah Wood as the lead, he's not memorable because the characters aren't animated to match the energy that he brings to the role, and thus he's not memorable. There's nothing that sticks, and I think Jack Frost with that puppet and that CG would have the same exact issue.
See, where I'll hit you on that just because that's fresh is the fact that was in the 2000s. That's just a later thing. That's just the 2000 CG. Where in this one, it's a combination of the puppets, like you said, but also just the practical effects mixed with the CGI. And I'm gonna hit it one more time with the thing. You say you want to have screen rights in your movie. So hypothetically, if Robin Williams was in Jack Frost, we could either screen right to mix something that mix him, or he's such a great actor that he can showcase he could do it. He just came off of a Good Will Hunting rap that he has range. Everything with the Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo's seriousness, that is actually the best part of the Super Mario Brothers movie is the first 20 minutes. It actually is a solid, decently filmed because of that brother dynamic. It's in the second half of the Fantastic where it gets terrible.
And time. Thank you both, gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and move into your 1-minute closing arguments. Aaron, right back to you whenever you start speaking.
Both of these movies are bad, and we're kind of approaching this argument from the same thing. In my opinion, and in what I am saying, I think putting Williams in place of Keaton and Jack Frost would actually drag down that film. The fact that you bring up his filmography in the 90s as a reason as to why it's a weird casting doesn't fly, because in the 80s, he was doing all sorts of things, including Beetlejuice and Mr. Mom, that appealed to kids. And after the fact, he would appear in films like Toy Story 3 and Cars. He does movies for kids throughout his career. There's not just a period where it works. Williams is high energy. He overacts. I don't think the puppet would be able to keep up with his energy, and it would feel mismatched and distract. And I think that in the human scenes when he's playing a rocker, he wouldn't be able to sell this successful potential rocker so much so that he has to abandon his family. Super Mario Brothers, Hoskins' performance is one of the things that drags that movie down because he's drunk off his ass and he takes it way too seriously. I think Robin Williams would be happy to be there. He would give the performance that this movie needs to match its weird energy and would improve it to something that is more watchable than it is.
Thank you very much, Aaron. We're going to go over to Mr. Henry. I told you I was going to keep calling you that. Whenever you start speaking, I'll start the timer.
So talking about Michael Keaton's filmography of the family stuff, that is everything that is 10 plus years. Beetlejuice is 88, Jack Frost is 98, so that is at least 10 years when he had a movie that was anywhere near similar. Whereas in Hook and Roger Rabbit, that was in the 90s or in the late 80s. So being compared to Super Mario Bros., it's very relevant. So that's why you would have Bob Hoskins there. So Robin Williams' filmography really matches that. Taken, like I said, the first 20 minutes of Super Mario Brothers is fantastic because of the brother dynamic of Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo. The point of Jack Frost is not the first 10 minutes of his rocker right before he dies. It's him getting back in the redemption of becoming a father. And Robin Williams has proven multiple times in different layers of movie that doesn't showcase his repetitiveness, where he can really do that. Whether it's in Miss Doubtfire or Hook, or even something like Jumanji and Fisher King, where it's that fish out of water element that he showcased that he can handle the different environments and he can really make it his own. So the puppetness, all that stuff is, hearsay, and that's just kind of guesswork, whereas he's proven the family stuff that he can nail it.
And time. Right on the head with that one. Thank you very much to both of these gentlemen. And just a little bit of fact checking and some interesting facts going on. Super Mario Brothers came out in 1993, and holy God, if you look up the images, it looks like a nightmare. I really don't want to watch this. I am ashamed if Aaron watched this, but whatever floats his boat. Just some interesting facts. The budget for this movie was $48 million. The box office was $38.9. Just looking right off of Google. The director of Super Mario Brothers, again, judges don't say any of what I'm about to tell you into consideration. Both the directors for the Super Mario Brothers movie don't really look like they have any sort of...
They were never heard from again. Wait. Who are the directors?
I'll give you $10 if you could tell me who Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel are. So yeah, don't watch this movie. The movie that Henry was talking about, Jack Frost, should not be confused with the rated R Jack Frost.
Oh, damn.
Is considered
Took the words out of my mouth.
Or slasher movie.
Classic.
I'm pretty sure
And it has a sequel.
there's a lot of included in that movie, but who knows? Just because I said earlier, the budget for this movie was $85 million and the box office was $34.6 million. So neither movie did really great. I think Aaron said something about the cast of Cars in there. At first, I thought he was talking about
Michael Keaton's in Cars. That's all.
Yeah,
he was talking about someone else being in Cars. I'm like, I don't think that person was.
He has a role in Cars. Just the first Cars film.
Yeah, Chick Hicks.
He's just a dick. Yeah, Chick Hicks the dick.
We don't like. Regardless of all that bullshit, we're gonna go ahead and judges. Judges, when I go to you, please, as concise as you can, tell who you went for this round and why you did. Jen, do you want to go first since it's your first time, or do you want to have someone else?
I do not care. Whatever floats your boat, man.
All right, we'll go to you first.
Awesome. Well, this was a great debate to start off. Honestly, I was really excited about it because, you both just dug into the trash bin because we really set a really low bar of improvement because these are both just garbage fires of movies. Honestly, going into this, having heard just the very first pick, I found myself thinking I would love to see a Robin Williams Jack Frost. I think he'd have a lot of fun with it. However, looking at the debate side, I think Aaron made a lot of fantastic points, and he actually ended up swaying my vote. He brought in a lot of information about the Super Mario Bros. Movie that I did not know, other than Hoskins being drunk off his ass. But yeah, honestly, I think Aaron just hit everything that Henry was throwing at him. I do agree with a lot of the points that Henry was making, but I think debate-wise, Aaron really knocked it out of the park, particularly in the cross section. So point to Aaron for me.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We're going to go over to you, Sir Ryan Payne. Who gets the point and why?
I'm actually going on the opposite here. Henry actually won me on this one. Mainly, Aaron did bring up a lot of great facts about the Mario Bros. Film, and he definitely gave some great instances of where Robin can improve. Henry, he was laying down not only how Robin Williams would be a great replacement for Michael Keaton, but he listed the films that he did around that time period that was enough to show you that if Jack Frost came after around the time he did Good Will Hunting, Mrs. Doubtfire, and around the 90s, and hell, even I think around after that around that time was also Jumanji. So you could see Robin Williams doing comedy and drama. So just him listing those filmographies, giving great examples on where his energy and his range as an actor can improve the film, that won me over.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ryan. And starting off first round, very strong. We're going to go to the third judge for a tiebreaker. Mr. Allen, who gets your point and why?
I'm actually going to go back over to Aaron, to be honest with you. I thought he brought up a lot of good points about improving that film, improving the Mario Brothers film. I mean, granted, there wouldn't be much that you could do because anything would improve the damn film. But I think Aaron made a lot of good points, especially, again, agreeing with Jen in that across the 4 minutes. He really hit a lot of good points on that to bring that to forefront. So I'm going Aaron.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We're going to drop you guys to the back. Thank you very much for your help and bring back our competitors. Great first round, everybody. Great first round. We love to see it go to the tiebreaker. 2019 is a very interesting year. You had some movies get nominated for Best Picture and Oscar that probably should not have gotten nominated, and while others maybe should have. I think. I won't tell you what I think. I'm going to let you hear what these competitors think. And so the question is, Of the nominated films, which 2019 film was the least deserving of a Best Picture nomination? To give you guys a little behind the scenes peek, that's actually not what I wrote, but we'll go ahead and say it is what I wrote anyway. Regardless, we'll go to our competitors. Wow, I'm just being bullshit at this point. I'm just saying whatever comes in my head. And we're going to go to our competitors. And again, since Henry went second the first round, he's going to go the first in this round.
I feel the need to explain that, considering I'm playing. I did not change the question on him. There was a miscommunication error, and somebody else sent the question he wrote to us. So it was variated from what it was supposed to be. That's what he meant.
Regardless, it's not too far off of what I had thought, but we're
I'm not trying to cheat, guys. I promise. Go ahead, Henry.
I mean, maybe he is, but we'll find out. Henry, whenever you start talking, I'll start the timer.
All right, so when you think of Best Picture nominations, you think of movies that essentially stand the test of time, not only for that specific year, but also just in the history of film. So when you think of what is considered the least deserving of that award or nomination, in a sense, you think of a movie that just generally is not going to stand the test of time, whether as a standalone film, let alone within the year itself. So the movie that I chose is The Irishman, Martin Scorsese's quote unquote epic Netflix release. And I'm not even bringing that into a factor of why it's a negative, but it's just one of those things where this is a movie that it's repetitive of essentially a lot of the Martin Scorsese tropes and like themes that you see in the entire films, and it's mid-level tier at best of his entire filmography. It's one of those films that you look at the acting, you look at the themes, you look at the de-aging, you look at all that stuff. It's one of those where at no point in any of these actors' career are you like, oh wow, The Irishman is the top of the top. So when you think of that film and you think of 2019 Irishman, you already forget that it came out, you already forget that it's within Scorsese's filmography. It just didn't deserve to be a Best Picture nominee.
All right. Thank you very much, Henry. We're going to go over to Aaron for his 1 minute opening debate. Aaron, go ahead and tell us about your movie.
So I don't 100% agree with your assertion of what a Best Picture nominee should be. I think the winners should be films that stand the test of time, but I think the nominees themselves should be a representation of what truly is the best of that year. When you go back and look, these are between 5 and 10 of the best films of that year. And for me, instinctively, more than any other question in this match, the one that stood out as the answer to me, and I know it's the unpopular choice, but I do believe that answer is Joker. This is a movie that received an exorbitant amount of praise when it came out because in the confines of the comic book genre, it is different than most of what is released. And I will give the movie that. But at the end of the day, this movie doesn't do anything that some of the best films of all time have done. And in fact, it very clearly is copying motifs from films that you can directly point to. It brings nothing to the table in terms of originality outside of a brilliant Joaquin Phoenix performance.
And time. A lot of interesting arguments going on right now. We'll see who comes out on top. Henry, right back over to you for your 2 minutes.
All right, so the difference between The Irishman and The Joker is essentially the IP. Martin Scorsese's name is attached to The Irishman, and honestly, if you took Martin Scorsese's name off of The Irishman and you just said The Irishman and you judge it accordingly, you're going to get a movie and you're going to get a reception like J. Edgar, Clint Eastwood's movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. It's one of those things where it's just overly long. It deals with makeup. It deals with a bunch of family drama. It deals with a bunch of, politics and BS. It has a whole subplot of everything with Jimmy Hoffa and Al Pacino's character. You're dealing with mafia stuff of these old men, and it doesn't even do a good job of portraying these actors as hitmen or badasses or any of that stuff, because Robert De Niro as an 80-year-old man is literally doing quote unquote his stunts, and it's just atrocious, and it does not hold up and it does not look well even the year it came out. The reason that people have given that movie acclaim is simply just because of the Martin Scorsese name. The majority of his movies are nominated because historically he's a good filmmaker, and the movie looks good and it's decently acted. Like, it's one of those things where obviously you have the names attached, it's going to get that. But the difference with Joker is if you take the name of Joker off of that movie and you just have that script and you just have Arthur Fleck, that movie not only deserves a Best Picture nomination, it probably wins that year, because the fact of the themes that it handles of mental health, the incredible acting, the concept of bullying, the concept of the social environment, not the environment, but like the dealing with the constructs of the city, the way it handles all of that stuff, and it's timeless within its era, because it takes place, in the 70s, and it just has those vibes. You say it mimics and copies other films similar to, Taxi Driver and King of Comedy, which ironically are Martin Scorsese movie. But guess what? Those are Best Picture nominees as well. So the fact that, like I said, you take Joker off of this, it does enough originality to it of having the subplot of everything with his mom Penny Fleck. Like I said, it actually like showcases the mental health aspect of it that differentiates from movies like Taxi Driver and King of Comedy, that showcases that not only is Joker Best Picture deserving, but it's going to be memorable years from now.
And time. Thank you very much, Henry. Aaron, right back over to you for your 2 minutes. No BS, no fluff. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
So to start off with that, Joker handles mental health the same way that I would say Taxi Driver and King of Comedy also does handle mental health. And yes, those are the exact films that it rips off. The only thing is, I think Joker does it in a more obvious way, because as a writer and a director, Todd Phillips is not on the level of Martin Scorsese, and I'm sorry, that's a fact. I think The Hangover is a well-directed film, and his comedies are funny, but he is not Martin Scorsese. Secondly, I'm going to hit back against the fact that you said that The Irishman is only as well rated as it is because Martin Scorsese directed, because Martin Scorsese has certainly directed films that have not received the amount of critical acclaim and Oscar success that he has. In fact, Scorsese is famous, despite the fact for being a director that has the career that he has. He's only won Best Director once, and it took all the way to The Departed for him to win it. I think if he was truly a director that was only getting acclaimed by the name, he would have won it well before then. So I am going to disagree with that statement. I think The Irishman absolutely earns its praise. But secondly, I'm going to go back into The Joker, because I think The Joker was simply nominated for Best Picture, not because it's this original art piece statement that does new and inventive things, but because it fits a quota. In 2009, the Oscars changed their Academy rules to go from 5 Best Picture nominees to open it up to a possibility of 10 Best Picture nominees. This was directly on the heels of The Dark Knight, a comic book blockbuster that people perceived as higher than the genre, not receiving a Best Picture nomination even after Heath Ledger winning Best Supporting Actor for The Joker. And so since then, we've seen a trend of higher grossing films that are popular with the audience receiving Best Picture nominees. Films like Black Panther in 2018, Get Out in 2017, Arrival in 2016, Mad Max Fury Road in 2015, and American Sniper in 2014. These are now, I'm not jesting the quality of these movies. Some of them are excellent, and I agree with their nominations. But you can't deny that in years past, these are movies that would have not been recognized by the Academy. It's only because they're attempting to appeal to the populist audience that they have made the cut. And I think The Joker is the least deserving in a writing trend with the Academy voters.
I can't believe Aaron just said Arrival in the same sentence as Joker. Anyway, I know the comparison you were trying to make, but I'm still taking offense because Arrival is my baby right there.
I'm not voting, so
thank God.
I'm sorry, that was dickhead.
Whenever one of you starts speaking, I'll start your timer for you for a minute.
So to defend everything that you're saying about Joker, to say that it's one of those things that quote unquote meets a quota because of its the genre and everything that covers, then in fact Logan would have been nominated for Best Picture and it wasn't. So it's not about that. It's about what it actually represents and the story that it tells. And the difference with all those films that you mentioned, other than American Sniper, none of them had a Best Lead Performance that was nominated, let alone one, like Joaquin Phoenix and Joker. So that's what differentiated. It had a screenplay nomination, which your movie did too, but in terms of your knock on Joker, that's its perfect defense. The difference with The Irishman and the Scorsese filmography is you're saying that he only won for The Departed, but he still had all those nominations. And the reason that this movie just kind of goes in, because it's like, oh yeah, member berries. Remember those good times we had with Casino. Remember those good times we had with Goodfellas. It's one of those where you bring in a movie that is quote unquote an epic, and we were trying to bring it back, and it just didn't work. Like I said, it's not going to hold up over time. So the fact of least deserving of nominations, the fact that it's one of those things where it's just name based and it's not going to hold up over time. Joker not only is going to hold up over time, but it's already one of the greatest movies, in the 2010s for a reason. So
Well, first off, I want to refute the little point that you made there that none of those films received any big nominations.
I said best
for
actors.
Well, no, for starters, Get Out had Daniel Kaluuya get nominated, so more than just one film fits that category.
That's fair, too.
And second, one performance doesn't make a great film. The fact of the matter is these are still movies that grossed a high amount of money that made it. And I believe Amy Adams was nominated for Arrival, although I'm not 100% sure on that, and she would be the lead from that film. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong.
Yeah,
but I didn't look that up. The point being here is that...
But that's a good example that you said that. I just don't want to cut you off too much. But you're actually naming these performances for a reason. That's what makes this memorable. No one's talking about Robert De Niro for The Irishman. In fact, he wasn't even nominated. And that's not the end-all be-all, but that just showcased the fact that he's not the memorable part of it. You nominate Pesci for that because it was kind of like a comeback, and you nominate Pacino for that because it's more like a comeback, not because of their actual performance and not because of the movie that they're in.
I think that they're nominated because the supporting actor category was weaker that year, and I think they are both
even
good
more
enough to warrant that I think they're both good enough to warrant that nomination, whereas De Niro does deliver a good performance just in a harder category that year in Best Actor. The thing with The Irishman is, whereas Joker is completely held on one major performance, The Irishman is an ensemble. As you said, you have really good performances from the likes of De Niro, Pacino, Pesci, Harvey Keitel, people that you expect to be in this movie. But I also want to put focus on people like Ray Romano and Anna Paquin, actors who aren't generally in films like this, who for the time that they are on screen deliver excellent performances that are brought out by Scorsese. Specifically Romano, who... When's the last time he was in a movie that wasn't an Ice Age film? Like, let's just be real. A movie that received real attention that wasn't an Ice Age film. And Romano acts alongside these legends without missing a fucking beat. And the thing with the Joker is I 100% believe that it hit it because of its quota. Specifically, I want to talk about its reception. Amongst audiences, it was received well because it's a comic book film that is slightly smarter than the other movies around it. And as I said, it only gets its brains because it's copying other better films. However, critically, it received a 68% aggregate like rating on Rotten Tomatoes with a 7.3 out of 10 rating, whereas The Irishman has a 95% like rating with an 8.8 out of 10 score. So it's not just about that big number. On both fronts, it received a higher score than Joker. And it's also a movie that received 11 nominations. However, it only won 2, actor and score, both of which I do believe that it was worthy of winning. However, to compare it to another recent film that came out, like The Power of the Dog, which got 12 nominees and only won once, it's a movie that has this big hype behind it and it receives all these nominations. But when you actually put the metal to the test, it's nowhere near as good as the films around it. And the proof is in the pudding with what it didn't win.
Yeah, so I'm just going to touch on the performances because I don't have a chance to talk. De Niro is better in Joker than he is in Irishman. Zazie Beetz, Francis Conroy, and Brett Cullen provide excellent performances that showcase that the ensemble is great too.
Time. We're going to go ahead and count that sentence because it's part of a bigger sentence. Judges don't have to strike anything. Sorry for that messing around with the timer. That's mainly for Aaron. And we're going to go to Henry for your closing 1-minute debate. Whenever you're ready.
All right, so everything that Aaron is saying right now is more clickbait stuff. It's more cheap shots of everything of, it's a comic book film. It made a lot of money. But if you actually look at the film of what it stands, De Niro is better in Joker than he is in Irishman, and he is the title character in Irishman. Zazie Beetz is a fantastic supporting character. Francis Conroy as Penny Fleck is fantastic, very heartbreaking. And it showcases that Todd Phillips is a fantastic director of many scenes of when Arthur, the first time he shoots, the first time when he has dream sequences, the fact that when he's dancing by himself, and that's his chance to kind of be himself, both in the bathroom but also on the stairs. The fact that it showcases the flashback and the reveal of Zazie Beetz's character of not being real, and that was all in his head. Everything with Brett Cullen's character as Thomas Wayne showcases the dynamic of the power of the man and his representation of the city, but also everything that he handles, and he's able to handle that all in 2 hours, and it showcases that it's a tight film that handles a lot of stuff, but it also does it fantastically. It's well acted, it's well written, it's well directed. It was a nice cheap shot you took on Todd Phillips, but I'd rather have Todd Phillips directing in this than Scorsese and Irishman.
Wow, I'm muted. Thank you very much, Henry. Whenever you start speaking, you'll get your 1 minute.
I think it's interesting that you say you'd rather have Todd Phillips direct than Martin Scorsese, because Martin Scorsese was actually originally approached. He turned it down and then signed on as an executive producer, probably because he felt bad if he didn't, because they did basically rip off his films. I'm not sitting here and trying to say that Joker's a bad movie. I'm saying that when you compare it to the best of 2019, the fact of the matter is it's nowhere near as original. It's nowhere near as well written. It's not as well directed. It's one really excellent performance from Joaquin Phoenix, and he did earn his Oscar. Joker. But if you take it out of the confines of the comic book genre and let that movie stand on its own as a film, I don't think it holds up to anything in 2019. And I don't think it even holds up to either Taxi Driver or King of Comedy. The Irishman is a movie that legitimately deserves its nomination. Sure, when you put it up against other gangster films that Scorsese has made, maybe it's not as good as them, but in the year that it was released, it is one of the best films and it did earn its award. It's not just there on name alone, because if it was, then other films of his would have been nominated in the past.
And time. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for this round. We're going to move you to the back and add our wonderful judges back into the stream. Over to you first, Alan, because I think you were last. So, Alan, who gets your point and what?
Man, they both brought it, this one. I'll be honest with you. They both really did. This was difficult. But I'm going to give it. I mean, we always know Aaron's going to bring the facts because he's a facts machine. The dude's a research heavy, crazy guy. So I'm going to give it, just a little bit to Aaron. But Henry, he fought like hell. It was great. But if I'm being honest, I got to go Aaron again.
All right. Thank you very much, Alan. We're going to go over to Ryan. Ryan, who gets your point and why?
This one's definitely much more tougher. I'm going to Henry by an edge because one thing is, I know during the debate, Aaron did bring up how Joker was, mostly lauded because it was his comic book IP. But earlier on, just before, I think in Henry's 2 minutes, he did set up a good, pretty much a good counter to that, saying that if you do remove Joker from the title and focus on the film of the character of Arthur Fleck, it is still a good Best Picture worthy nomination film. Joker was mainly added there because it got the fanfare, and that is one point of credit to Aaron. But I did not honestly hear, or maybe because it was or maybe so many facts were being thrown at me, I didn't write it down. I don't know if I heard Aaron bring up at least a counterbalance to a Joker if it would have been a better film without the title name of Joker involved. But also him constantly bringing up the comic book IP, it did leave him open for Henry to constantly throw more not insults, but to chip away at the Irishman. So
Gotcha. I'll appreciate it, Ryan. And we'll go over to you, Jen, for your opinion. Who gets the point and why?
No, this was very well fought. Honestly, I thought Aaron had me right out the gate because I had a visceral reaction. If you could see me behind the scenes when he said Joker, it's oh yeah. So, but he was going he was doing a very good job, and I really liked his argument of talking about how it was the Oscars trying to fill a quota. But I thought that was one of your strongest arguments. But Henry just turned around immediately in the next section and said, if that were true, Logan would have been nominated. That was a very strong point. And then on top of that, Henry did a very good job of chipping away all the important things about The Irishman that it just has not stood the test of time. And I think that is true of least deserving for Best Picture noms. And yeah, so Henry wins, but he also loses because I fucking hate the Joker. So yeah, so you can be happy and sad at the same time, Henry. There you go.
All right, well, thank you.
Tagline: whoever wins will lose.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't see myself watching either of these films for a very long time again. So.
Oh man.
Well, just remember, everyone, we live in a society. Yeah. Get Henry back in here. Great round for the two of you. And now we move into a very interesting question, one that I'm kind of proud of. If you listen to my podcast, you would know that I am not quite a Kubrick fan. Granted, I haven't seen too many of his films. I haven't seen Clockwork Orange yet. I haven't seen Eyes Wide Shut yet. But the ones that I have seen, I've been kind of disappointed in and kind of been let down and I'm not really impressed. But you guys don't care about me and my opinions. You care about theirs and the question. And that question is going to be, what Kubrick film, I keep saying his name wrong, Kubrick film would be the most successful if released today? And boy, do these competitors have some answers, so I'll let them get into them. And we're going to go ahead and go to, I believe, Aaron first this round. Yeah, Aaron, you go first this round whenever you're ready.
All right, so I guess Noah's opinion aside, because everyone does have their own personal taste. That's not a shot. Just everyone has their own personal taste. In terms of general critical reception, Kubrick is one of the most acclaimed directors of all time. But of all the directors in his era, the likes of the Spielbergs and the Scorseses, Kubrick is the only one that, unfortunately, of the mega class that didn't live into the modern day. Those guys are still directing. Unfortunately, Kubrick passed away and didn't get to continue. So it is a really interesting question having to analyze older films and figure out which one would be the most successful. With that said, though, I do wholeheartedly believe that the one that would succeed the most today is 2001: A Space Odyssey, because I think right now when you look at the financial success of films in the modern day, and I'll get into what successful is in the 2 minutes because I think that's a very broad term, but I think no matter how you approach the concept of successful, I think 2001 is a good enough movie that it could meet that quota any which way.
And that's going to be time for Aaron. Henry, whenever you're ready, you get 1 minute as well.
All right, so obviously, what Noah said is kind of hearsay because it's his opinion of one person, but it kind of helps strengthen my argument of what I'm going to go to my point of. When you think of Kubrick's film, you think of movies that aren't as accessible for today's era of people, whether it's film audiences, younger people, different generations, et cetera, et cetera. So the movie that I chose is Paths of Glory, and the reason I chose this film because it's a combination of a drama, it's a combination of morality talk, but it's also an action film with the war backdrop. So it's a film that covers all three of those elements. So in terms of successful, it covers a basis of different audiences that you look for. You look for a younger generation with the war. You look for an older generation that is more mature and can handle the morality aspect of it. And it's just a fantastic film. It's less than 2 hours long, so it's quick and swift. So people's life and attention spans in non-superhero films showcase that doesn't usually do as well. So Paths of Glory would be his most successful if released today.
All right. Thank you very much, Henry. Aaron, you know what time it is. You know what to do. 2 minutes for you whenever you start speaking.
Okay, well, first things first, calling Paths of Glory an action film is very, very generous. The actual war scenes in that film last all of, 5 minutes, and you barely see anything. That wouldn't stand for modern audiences. But going back to 2001: A Space Odyssey, cerebral sci-fi is something that has grown in popularity over the course of the 2010s due to directors like Christopher Nolan and Denis Villeneuve making films that are captivating the audiences with just these crazy, interesting concepts. Success is a really difficult thing to measure because depending on what type of movie you are, you measure your success differently. If you're a blockbuster film, you're trying to make money. If you're an art house film, then you're trying to find maybe Oscar success. Or if you're trying to build a franchise, then you want to find some level of critical success in addition to box office success. So when you measure those three, I think 2001 would hit all of those areas. The movie currently is widely regarded as one of the best sci-fi films of all time. When it was initially released, it did receive a mixed reception, but that's because it was a movie that was out of the norm of the time. But in the modern era where films like that are beloved, I think it would receive the reaction it has now more immediately. In terms of Academy and award success, the film was released at a time when genre films weren't shown a lot of love. Despite this, 2001 received a couple of nominations and did win one for Best Visual Effects. In lieu of Dune's success last year at the Academy Awards, I do believe 2001 would sweep the technical awards at the Oscars. It's got incredible visuals. Even as a film from the 60s released today, it still looks beautiful. It's well shot. It's got an incredible, or the score, because it's not original, wouldn't be nominated, but it's got great cinematography. Its sound design is incredible. All of that would be nominated, including Kubrick as a director. In terms of box office, and there's a lot of detail behind this that I can explain later, but when you take some of the biggest sci-fi films released over the course of the last 10 years and you average them together, take out theater outtake, take out there's no way I'm going to be able to explain this, but basically sci-fi films make money, and this movie's original box office falls in the range of that. That's too big a stat to ever try and read. That's my bad. Sorry.
And time. Judges, please strike all of the. No, I'm kidding. Don't strike anything. Henry, right over to you for your 2 minutes.
All right, so not knocking Paths of Glory for its action. It's one of those things where that's the reason that was going to make it successful, because it showcased they can handle different elements of it. The scene at the scene, and oh my god, the No Man's Land scene is in this film that took place 50 to 60 years prior is way better than the one in Wonder Woman, because of the fact that it was actually practical. It had real life explosions. You actually felt like you were in danger and you didn't have a superhero at it. So it showcases the real life elements. Comparing this movie to other war films within the 2010s, specifically in the later range, Quantum Codite, you have specifically 1917, which is most successful. You have movies like Dunkirk, and you have movies like Hacksaw Ridge that showcase the action element of it. But you also have movies like Darkest Hour, Unbroken, and Bridge of Spies that also showcase that they can be successful while also not being a quote-unquote action-based war film. You have movies that are even similar, that are well-received but didn't make a lot of money, like Fury and the most recent Kingsman, which is one of those where it's hit or miss, but I think that's more because of the franchise element, not because of the war and what it represents. The reason that Paths of Glory would be successful today is because if you showcase of how it's able to handle the master direction of Kubrick, it showcases that transcends time. The difference of that in 2001: A Space Odyssey is actually similar of why, if you ask today's modern younger generation, they really prefer the new age Star Wars or even the prequels to the original Star Wars, because it just doesn't hold up on a practical. Yes, back in the 60s, the fact that they were able to use the different elements of the camera work and all that stuff and make it look good just worked for the time, and it holds up today for what it represents and how it was handled back then. But if you actually look at it as like a first time release today, it definitely would not stand up as well. And like you said originally, if it was mixed back then, it's because of the storyline of 2001. It's meandering. It's 2.5 hours. You don't know what happens by the end. This movie is more like the movie of High Life from A24 than anything that you've said in like Dune and Interstellar from Nolan. 2001 is a movie that people would not get today because they still don't get it from back when it was released years later.
Thank you very much, Henry. I think the takeaway from this is the kids nowadays are stupid, and that the older Star Wars are the best. Regardless of that, my opinion doesn't matter. We'll go over to either one of you for the 4-minute debate.
All right, so I just want to continue what I was saying of the storyline of 2001. So it showcases the different elements of time and eras, and when you actually look at it, the only thing that you ever remember from 2001, like from a overall standpoint, is HAL 9000. But that's one of those things that a character like that is not going to stand out in today's era. Like look at Moon, a fantastic movie from Sam Rockwell and quote unquote Kevin Spacey as Gertie. It's one of those things that people consider it quote unquote underrated because it doesn't have that mass success. So 2001 would just go under the rug of one of those movies that just doesn't get seen because it's overly long and overly. Paths of Glory, it's a tight under 2 hours. It's a movie that showcases both the family dynamic. It's as beautiful black and white, and movies like The Lighthouse proven that even today's era you can see a movie in black and white and it'll still do well. And it's a movie that just showcases fantastic acting. Kirk Douglas is one of, if not his best performance entire career, it's one of them, and it showcases at the helm of the action, the acting, the script, the direction. Everything is in Paths of Glory is better in general than 2001, let alone would hold up better if it was released today.
So again, you keep bringing up action, but that's the thing with Paths of Glory is it doesn't have all that much action. There's maybe 2 sequences, the one where they go out for the night stakeout, and then the actual No Man's Land, the actual attack that becomes the result of the court case later in the film. Both of those are 5 minutes or less, and they both come within the first 25 minutes of this movie. The large bulk of this movie is characters standing around and talking about the consequences of the actions, the bulk of which you don't get to see. I mean, when it comes to Kirk Douglas defending these guys, the bulk of them are, you don't see them in the actual sequence. You're just connecting to what you're told about these characters. You can't actually connect to the characters.
Well, I'm not saying that this movie is relying on the action. I'm just saying that's an element. So when you look at today's audience,
I give you your chance. The war movies that you are comparing it to in 1917 in Fury run the scope of war films. They are war films that come with a message.
I also brought up Darkest Hour, Unbroken, and Bridge of Spies. Don't forget about those.
Okay, but those are different. And those movies weren't nearly as financially successful as the main.
They still made money. They still made enough money. If you can fact check it, they made a lot of money that was worth more than its budget.
Are you going to let me speak for more than 2 seconds?
I'm just
going to keep cutting off?
I'm giving you quick.
All right. The point that I'm trying to make here is the bulk of what you would be comparing this movie to, because it is a World War I movie, are the war movies that have come out like the 1917s, like the Dunkirks, like the Furies. This movie is not those movies. And when you compare it to the likes of The Darkest Hours, if you want to take it that route, quite honestly, it is good. It's not as good as those movies either. This movie has one performance in Kirk Douglas, and Kirk Douglas is very good, but everything else in it is fine. I think this movie is too slow. I think despite the fact that it's an hour and a half, there's not enough going on. The bulk of the action is out of the way after the first 25 minutes, and I don't think it would actually grasp the attention of audiences. Secondly, I think you're giving audiences nowadays a lot less credit. We have seen in the past couple of months, all right, so here's something I'll pull out, okay? In the months from in the months of March to May, there were 11 films that received a wide release, all of which were not attached to a major Hollywood franchise. Only 2 of them opened to more than 15 million domestically and thus turned a profit: The Lost City and The Bad Guys. And of those 11 films, 7 of them were beaten at the box office by Everything Everywhere All at Once, a cerebral sci-fi film that opened on a small release and expanded, that is over 2.5 hours, and that makes you think while you're watching it. Just because 2001 is slow and
I love that you
audiences
mentioned
wouldn't get it.
I love how you try to use that as a fact, but that's a movie in the multiverse where that's very common now, and that's what's high at the moment. Like I said, everything with 2001, that's more like the A24 high life. And even though everyone loves Blade Runner 2049, it didn't make money. So trying to compare it to Villeneuve's movies and Dune, it's one of those where a lot of people
compare it
think
to Arrival.
Yeah, and it's one of those where it just
money.
Yeah, it made money, but if you look at the movie, it's fine. It doesn't make the bukus of money. And like I said, everything with the war movies, I compared it to the action, but also the family. I mean, the drama aspects in the acting.
And time. Is anyone else getting a little hot? It's starting to heat up a little bit in here. It's getting a little spicy. We'll go ahead and finish it. Aaron, back over to you for your 1-minute closing debate.
Path of Glory is a good movie, and I'm not going to disagree with you on that. It is a good film, but the fact of the matter is it doesn't have what the movie needs to succeed now. Okay, in terms of box office success, it doesn't have enough to draw people in to go see the actual movie. I think it would fail at the box office. In terms of critical success, it was already praised back in the day. There's nothing you can really improve on there. And in terms of Academy success, all it has going for it is Kirk Douglas's awards. It's not technical enough to take any of those awards, and I don't think it's good enough to stack up to most of the Best Picture nominees over the last couple of years. 2001: A Space Odyssey is a movie that, despite the fact that it may be hard to understand, was a movie that ended up becoming highly influential to the sci-fi genre. Most of what we see today was in some way inspired by 2001: A Space Odyssey. I think just because it's a slower film that's more cerebral, that makes you think, that shows you visuals instead of talking, it is easy to understand. If you are watching and you are paying attention and you are giving it its due, you can understand the message that it is trying to deliver to you. And I think it is masterfully directed by Kubrick to a way that it would still succeed today. Your movie wouldn't. 2001 matches the profile of what succeeds more.
And time. Thank you, Aaron. Henry, over to you for your 1-minute closing debate. Starting when you speak.
All right, so like I said, everything with Paths of Glory, it's a movie that, yes, it took place in World War I. So in comparison directly of just the relevancy of 1917, not as action-based, but showcase that you can handle movies like that, it has the interest in it. But in comparison to movies similar in tone, like Unbroken, Bridge of Spies, and even Fury until that third act, it's one of those that is based on the character work and the drama. And all of those movies made more than twice their budgets, and they definitely were successful in their own right, making all well over $100 million on less than $100 million budget. So it's a movie. It showcased that if you had Kirk Douglas' performance, Stanley Kubrick's direction, and also the side performance of the 3 men that are standing on trial, it would have supporting actor nominations. It would have clearly best lead from Kirk Douglas. It would have best director from Stanley Kubrick, and it would clearly have best writing. It's a movie that's similar to like 12 Angry Men, Reservoir Dogs, where even though they talk about they just talk about the action, they don't showcase. It shows that in today's era it would be successful. 2001: Space Odyssey, like you said, it's confusing, and you said you'd give it your time, but it took 60 plus years and people are still confused of what that movie represents, and it just would not stand up immediately.
And time. Thank you very much, Henry. And thank you very much, competitors. We're going to go and drop you the back and bring back our lovely judges. Again, please don't take into consideration whatever I'm about to say. But holy shit, is 2001: A Space Odyssey a boring fucking movie, and it is one of my most hated movies of all time. I will die on that hill. I'm probably going to get crucified, and I'm probably not going to have a film career after this, but I said what I said. Whatever. If we go to the 2001: A Space Odyssey awards, it did win an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, as well as some BAFTAs in there and some other random bullshit awards. Someone brought up Moon, which is a 2009 movie featuring Sam Rockwell and Kevin Spacey. If you guys haven't watched it, go watch it. It's a very fun movie. It's over on HBO Max right now. Very interesting sci-fi movie. Kevin Spacey, funny enough, is kind of coming back in a way. I think he's been cast in a movie.
Move on.
Maybe we'll see. Let's hope not. Uh, the three movies that I caught from Henry.
Pivot.
The three movies that I caught from Henry about the war movies were Bridge of Spies, Unbroken, and Fury. In terms of their box office, Bridge of Spies made a total of $165.6 million against a budget of $40 million. Unbroken had a box office of $163.4 million and a budget of $65 million. Fury did $211.8 million against a budget of $68 million. So he was pretty correct on those numbers there. The numbers that I said don't really matter, but whatever you guys say does. So I believe we go.
Wow, man. Come on now. Let's see. I'm going to go. I hate to be, just going for Aaron every time, but he pulled this one off. I mean, he really just kind of nailed Henry again with everything. So, Aaron, you got it.
All right, Jen, now that will go to you.
Yeah, that got really spicy in there. Girls, you're both pretty. You both picked really good movies. I think, honestly, both of these would have a very strong chance. And you, for all the arguments you said of being successful, released today. However, I am going to have to also give the point to Aaron. Aaron laid out a thesis for what it means to be successful. And all of his arguments between box office awards and prestige and story, I just check. He was doing a fantastic job, even though Paths of Glory is a great movie. Please go watch it. Please go watch both of these films. But yeah, I think Aaron really he laid the groundwork really well right out the gate, and he just kept hitting the entire time. So he kind of had Henry back on his heels there during the cross. So yeah, I think we got to give the point to Aaron.
Awesome. Thank you very much for our judges. We're going to send you the back. Go and enjoy a drink or something, but not for too long, because the question number 4 is coming right up. And I'll be honest with you guys, I'm not really familiar with John Carpenter. I mean, I've seen a couple of the Halloween movies, but I haven't seen them all the way through. Please don't pick that as your strength if you're going to go against me in the battleground, because I'm not going to do well. But the fourth question for today is, what is John Carpenter's most overrated movie? Yeah, this should be fun to hear. So we're gonna go back over to Henry for your 1-minute opening debate on what's the most overrated John Carpenter movie.
All right, so when you think of overrated, it's one of those questions that it's tough to interpret because there's no real standard definition, and definitely because obviously all of this is subjective. But in terms of deciding what is overrated, it's how do you really handle it? So what I'm going for is I'm going at quote unquote the toppest of the mountain, and I'm going to do the biggest fall. So I'm going with Halloween, and the reason that this movie is overrated is because if you actually look at what this movie is and the time period of what it represents of the slasher film, it's not really even the best of its kind. It's just one of those where it just came out at a time and people have the nostalgia for it. It's just cool. It's a guy in a mask who's scary and all stuff, but you actually look at the themes of the movie, you look at the direction of the movie, and you look at the acting within specifically the first one. It's one of those where it just doesn't hold up today. And most of the people that go back in time and watch for the first time, they're like, I mean, it's fine. It did a good job, but it's one of those the reason that the new Halloween movies are successful or because of the fact that it ramps up the action, and that's what people want. So you're looking at the old one, it just doesn't hold up.
All right, thank you very much, Henry. Aaron, right over to you for your 1-minute opening debate.
Yeah, I mean, as the guy who writes the bulk of these questions and forces overrated onto competitors, because it allows me to basically keep categories live for longer. You're right. Overrated is an incredibly subjective term, and it's all about how you're kind of approaching this. And Carpenter's a really interesting director. I'm going to recount something from the chat that we had when we set up this match, because Jacob West, who contributed to the questions as well alongside Noah, made a comment when he saw my answer. And I said to him, it's not my fault that Carpenter's entire filmography is basically legendary films that are respected or piles of dog shit. It's one or the other. He doesn't really have a middling film. So when you're looking at the films that are respected as all-time greats, the one that I think doesn't hold up over time and thus to me would be overrated is They Live. I think for what it is fine, but in the modern context, I just don't think it's as good as anything else he's done.
And time. Thank you, Aaron. Henry, you got 2 minutes on the clock for you whenever you're ready.
So on the contrary of what Aaron said of They Live, it's actually one of those things that actually is super relevant to like today's day and age. You have movies like Sorry to Bother You, even the most recent Batman, what we talked about earlier in Joker, of just how everything of the social commentary of the corrupt, people selling their souls and all that stuff. It's one of those movies that ironically I'm actually going to start pitching that this movie is underrated. It's actually a fantastic movie, and it's one of those movies a lot of people look like, oh, the Roddy Piper movie, the movie with the wrestler who's in the thing, the whole I came here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, I'm all out of bubblegum, that movie, that's what people think about. But when you actually sit down and watch this movie, it's fantastic. Roddy Piper's acting is way better than it had any right to do. It has a fantastic score. It kind of feels like a Nomadland that just came out recently, the Francis McDormand movie, of just kind of watching a guy go through his life and just kind of react to things that happen around him, and it turns into a sci-fi film in the third act. And that's one of those things that if you look at it, holds up today because the action is great, it's well choreographed, it's well directed, and all the effects hold up. The difference between Halloween, there's actually a thing that is behind the scenes of John Carpenter showcased the unfinished film in terms of the final like touches, and Halloween did not have the score on the original thing, and the executive producer literally said this movie is not scary at all. When the executive producer saw it again, she was like, wow, the movie is a lot better than I expected. And that's because of the movie. The score is what really elevates that movie, because if you take the score out of the movie, it's kind of really boring. It's just people walking around and really doing nothing. And when you look at the third act, there's only a body count of like 3 or 4 people. You can fact check specifically, but it's one of those where no bloodshed. And when you're looking at that era of movies like the Friday movies and the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, of the other quote unquote slasher movies around that time, that's what people want nowadays. And that's why the Halloween movies from Rob Zombie's movies and David Gordon Green's movies have turned into, because that's what people want. The movie is the acting is subpar. Jamie Lee Curtis is new to acting. It's one of those things. She got better even just a couple years later in Prom Night and even in Halloween 2, and just showcased that Halloween 1970 just does not hold up. Take the score out and that movie's just meh.
And time. All right, Aaron, you know the drill. Whenever you're ready, you got this.
So I'm not going to disagree with you that They Live has themes that would be relevant to today. I would actually agree with you on that point, but just because a movie has themes doesn't necessarily mean it's good. And again, I'm not saying that They Live is bad necessarily. I think it's fine. But in the context of this movie, because I don't think it's underrated at all, I do think it is highly regarded as among the great films that he has made. And I would say that of all of them, this is the one that kind of hits the middle. Sure, for a wrestler that transitioned to film, Roddy Piper is fine. But I think putting in, and I hate to use this term, sorry, wrestling fans, but putting an actual actor with real screen experience to that extent to be the lead in that role would have elevated it. Considering he's the Carpenter lead, the likes of like what a Kurt Russell would play in other films, I think having an actor of that caliber would have actually elevated this film. Secondly, I think it's very dated in terms of its effects. I don't think that they hold up all that well when you look at them through the modern lens, and obviously that's going to happen. But I just talked about 2001, a movie that's older than this that I think has aged beautifully. This one I don't think has aged all that well. In terms of talking about Halloween, I think it's interesting that when you cite other examples of horror films that came out around that time that give you what you want more, you're naming films that came out after Halloween. The reason that Halloween doesn't fit the mold of the modern horror film is because it's the thing that kind of created the mold of the modern slasher. To say that if you take the score out and it's boring, well, no, not necessarily. The scares may not scare you as much, but a score is just as much a part of a film as every other aspect of the film is. And so if the score, and specifically the fact that it's a John Carpenter created score, meaning the director had just as much an influence on that as he does on other parts of the film, is what enunciates and really amps up the scares for you, then that's just, to me, great filmmaking. It's not a detriment on the movie. In terms of the performances, I do think they hold up. Jamie Lee Curtis is very new and fresh-faced, but I think that adds to the point that she's a teenager that doesn't really know how to handle herself in this situation.
And time. Aaron, I'm going to take 1 second off for you the next round. I'm just kidding. Look at me. I should be a stand-up comedian. You guys go ahead and talk because I sound stupid every time I do.
All right,
You're
so
doing great, buddy.
just to go back on that. So like I said, yes, in fact, Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street came after, but the difference of those movies is Friday the 13th, it's a slower paced movie similar to Halloween, but it had a twist ending of Mrs. Voorhees. Nightmare on Elm Street had the over the top gore and all that stuff. But if you want to compare a movie that came out before, you have something like Psycho, and the difference is the fantastic acting and the storyline of Norman Bates and the twist at the end. That's what separates that from Halloween. There's no story. Everything's just random. He breaks out and he randomly finds this girl. There's no connection. He's just scary. And sure, if you want to have him be the quote unquote shape, then you need a higher body count. It just doesn't have that. Everything with They Live, it's fantastic. It's commentary. Every time the first time you see him put on the glasses and it showcases, it's the best example of show, don't tell. It just lets you literally see what's going on, and it really takes its time of going into it. So when you have that third act of the culmination of the action scene, it just comes together full circle. Whereas in Halloween just meanders to a climax that is meh.
In terms of talking about Halloween, I would say that just because there's no big twist or high body count doesn't mean it's not a good movie. In fact, in terms of concept, I think the idea of a Michael Myers is much scarier than some of the other films that you're referencing, because Michael Myers is something that feels a little more real. In this movie, he's not this weird eternal being that he would go on being in the other movies with the fucking cult and the never dying and all that. In this thing, he's just a fucking psycho. There is no connection between Jamie Lee Curtis and him in this movie, and that makes it scarier that he's just going after her and this town, just out there to kill. He's got no connection to these people, he's got no motivation, but he just wants to fucking kill, and you don't know why, and you have to try and stop him. That to me is scarier than something like Psycho, for example, which is a really great film. And you're right, there are good performances in it. But I would almost say that Halloween is an evolution of what Psycho was, pushing it closer to the modern slasher film, but I still think it is elevated above those. I do think Halloween is more effective than something like Nightmare on Elm Street, which even in that first movie, there's that layer of humor there that I think can sometimes take you out of the scenario.
Yeah, but the difference is, like I said, there's no characterization of everything with Laurie Strode, even her being the person that you follow. You're not really even rooting for at the end, other than the fact that she's the person that you're watching. There's nothing about her that stands out. Whereas in They Live, Roddy Piper's character, he's literally a down and out drifter who's looking for work, and he's trying to find his way in the world, and he forms a relationship with Keith David's character. And it's one of those where it showcases of like, hey, you can be homeless, but we're not going to look down on you. So the social commentary. So the juxtaposition of that between everyone, of the concept of the obey and how you open the glasses and you see the actual people selling their souls, and they have the watches and everything, and they beam up, and it's one of those things for at its time, it looks fantastic. The actual makeup of the faces, like I said, and when you actually put on the glass and the black and white, just the way that the filmmaking is there, John Carter stands out. And like I said, everything in Halloween, it's just bland. There's not even that many great shots because of the budget. It's one of those things. But if we're really looking at it of its iconicness, it has nothing to do with the actual film itself, just the concept of Michael Myers, not really the film itself.
I would disagree. Again, I think the filmmaking behind Halloween is, you're right, it is low budget, it is a little guerrilla-ish at times, but I think it adds more into what the actual movie is going for. Again, it's this movie that feels, it doesn't feel wholly cinematic, and I mean that in the best way possible, because it feels like an experience you could go through. In terms of talking about They Live, in terms of the whole Overlord thing, I think you're right, those themes do stand relevant today. I think the fact that Roddy Piper is a drifter has nothing to do with trying to speak up for the homeless. If you were in that situation, I don't think it mattered who you were with. If you just knew that somebody was on your side, you would work with them. In terms of if you're Keith David's character, I think the fact that he's more a drifter is John Carpenter really just taking the idea from Mad Max of guy drifts into situation, has to deal with it, and then drifts off again.
And time. I believe it's all right, Henry, I believe. Yeah. Henry, go ahead for your 1 minute closing debate.
So like I said, everything with Halloween, you take the score out and it's just not as memorable. Michael Myers doesn't do anything that stands out as a character or even as a killer. You have comparisons of like Anthony Perkins in Psycho, and it really showcased both the acting but also just the ability of how his creepiness factors in. You can even have random movies like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, where it's like he's really creepy, he's really well acted, but no one talks about it because it's one of those things where the concept of the psycho killer is not what's interesting. The reason that this movie is so great is because of that score. And when you really look at the body count, you say that's what makes it great. But if you look at it, it really doesn't stand out to the test time of what is beloved of horror in general. That's why people have love for the shitty action 80 movie or horror 80 movies, because of just how much fun and over the top they are. Like I said, this movie is just mad because it just doesn't stand up to time. They Live is a movie that not only is not overrated, it's underrated, because not only at the time it's one of those that people didn't give it the chance because of the Roddy Piper aspect of leading it, but if you actually look at it today, it stands up both commentary, but also visually, acting, directing, and everything within that movie stands up today.
And time. Right back over to you, Aaron, whenever you're ready.
Again, I don't think that They Live. It's certainly not underrated because it is talked about amongst. Again, it's the great films of Carpenter and the bad films of Carpenter, and They Live is most certainly in that great group. It is talked about alongside Assault on Precinct 13, Halloween, Escape from New York, Little Trouble in Big China. It's amongst those films. It is not underrated when you talk about his filmography. However, unlike all the films that I've compared it to, I don't think, for the most part, because I'm sure there's things in every film. Oh, The Thing, how to forget that. But there's not, obviously there's things in every film that don't age well, but I don't think the effects have aged well in this. I don't think Roddy's acting is all that great. I think he is fine for being really a non-actor in that sense and transitioning into this leading role. I think another actor could have improved this movie. I think your criticisms of Halloween are more just comparing it to the things that came after it. And I don't think that's 100% fair, because it is the thing that inspired it. And I think it is the thing that elevated it. Slasher films have kind of been de-elevated into just who can get the most kills, whereas Halloween is a little more cerebral and goes for something more.
And time. Thank you very much, competitors, for another great round. We're going to go and judge this one. I don't have too many fact checks for you on this one. I want to start off by saying, at the time of this recording, I'm getting married in a week and a half. I know you guys don't give a shit, but I'm saying this because I think the sexiest voice alive belongs to one man, Keith David.
Yes.
God damn. What a voice.
I mean, he's there. The Dennis Haysbert's a close fucking.
No lies detected. That's a fact check right there. I like that.
Goliath forever, baby. Goliath forever.
Princess and the Frog is not a great movie, but just a song that he has in there. Exactly. Are you ready? I am ready, Keith David. I'm ready. In terms of more relative fact checks, the victims in They Live, I think Henry asked me to fact check that. Total was 53 deaths. 34 of those were alien zombies and 19 of those were human. In Halloween, it got confusing because it has so many timelines and everything, and I haven't watched all of these, so it makes it even worse. But in the 4 to 6 timeline, which is said to be the original timeline, the first Halloween, there's only 9 victims. Only 9 victims. So, again, do with that as you will. Judges, don't take it on account. Jen, we're going to go over to you. Who gets your point and why?
Oh man, this one was really tough. Like, honestly, you guys had me ping-ponging back and forth the entire time. Aaron came out of the gate really strong with a really true statement of Carpenter's films are either great or piles of dog shit. I really like that. However, I feel like that actually undercut Aaron's argument, because later he was saying that They Live is just fine and in the middle. So that kind of took away the power of that statement. So yeah, meanwhile, like, Henry had a lot of great points, both in favor of his choice of Halloween while also taking down They Live. So I think I got to give the point to Henry. Having said that, I hate the term overrated. And I would argue that neither one of these are. So, but it was a really well argued fact on both sides. And yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis is awesome. So yeah, there you go.
I did not write this question. That's all I have to say. Ryan, we'll go over to you. Who gets the point and why?
This one definitely was one of the more, definitely another hard fought battle. This time, I don't know. There was just, it wasn't as close as one for the second round. I didn't give an opinion for the third one because it was already decided. But I will say, agree with Jen. Aaron's opening statement did sort of hurt him a little bit, because Henry, it kind of hurt him a little bit, but then it also helped with Henry building up his argument on why Halloween was just not good. Although throughout, I will say, Aaron gets it slightly.
Yeah, I'm agree with Jen, and then Ryan seconded it with Aaron having that killer line at the beginning, and then it kind of hurt him a little bit towards the end there. I mean, both of them are wrong. These are two certified classics. I don't care what nobody
Thank
says, especially They Live, baby. And I'm going to give it to Henry because he came out and said, now look, They Live is very underrated in a lot of ways, and then listed boom, 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 boom of how it held up. And so I think I'm going to give it to Henry.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, judges. I appreciate your opinions and helping out for this match. That being said, we are moving into the blind round. Aaron, how do you want me to do this since they're not written in?
Yeah.
And the players are given is one that they do not know about ahead of time. We're going to release it to them and to the public for the first time in a couple seconds. They're going to be given a general prompt first, to which they have to respond to that, and whoever answers first will go first. Once they have answered, the full question will be given to them. Even if their answer doesn't 100% fit the question, they have to do their best to debate for the win. They will have a few moments to quickly prep, and then they'll debate with the same rules as the last 4 questions. And there's going to be 2 questions asked, 2 blind round questions asked this way. It's going to be a very interesting round. Again, same format, so it's going to be 1 minute opening debate, 2-minute rebuttal, 4-minute kind of discussion, and then 1 minute closing. You guys know what's going on. So, competitors, if you're ready, I'm going to give you your first generalization or general question.
Yep.
All right. For the first part, pick a director from this list. Orson Welles, Alfred Hitchcock, Stanley Kubrick, Sergio Leone, Spike Lee, Quentin Tarantino, Paul Thomas Anderson, and David Fincher.
Hitchcock.
Tarantino.
All right. And do you want the next generalization or the
Yeah,
question?
do them both, yeah. And then we'll reveal the questions.
All right, next generalization. Pick a streaming service.
HBO Max.
Disney Plus.
Awesome. Did you write those down?
Yep, you can keep going. I got you.
All right, so the first blind round question, the first real question. What famous director who has never won an Oscar for Best Director should have won an Oscar? So with the first question.
Okay, you're good.
All right, and the second question. What streaming service puts out the best original content?
Okay.
One good? All right, so for you guys, it's going to be a couple seconds. For us, it's going to be a couple of minutes. We'll be back right here with some more debating. See you guys in a little bit. And welcome back, everyone. It was a great couple of seconds. Hope you guys had fun thinking some introspective thoughts. That doesn't matter. What matters right now is the blind round. And the question for this first round question is, what famous director who has never won a directing Oscar should have won one?
So, sorry if I misworded it slightly, but that's the gist, right?
It's the same thing. It means the same thing. You didn't pull a Jacob, you know. Anyway, I believe we're going to you, Aaron.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to go to Aaron first. And when
Yeah. So I do want to say one more thing before
Yep.
I hit the timer. Henry, continuously, best of luck, sir.
Absolutely, you too, buddy.
Second, actually, I'm going to go big on myself for a second because I have the power. This is for all of you out there who have been playing and supporting since day one and who have complained about the existence of the blind round. After 80 episodes and continuing to avoid it for 5 matches, now you get to watch me meet the destruction of my own creation.
Well, there you go, folks. You heard it from him. Go ahead, Aaron, whenever you're ready.
Okay. With that said, when you look at the modern landscape of direction, I think there is no one such person who is more influential in the last 30 years than Quentin Tarantino. He is one of the biggest directors of our time. I think he is one of the most influential. He almost single-handedly created the boom of the indie film that has continued to engulf the Oscars, despite the fact that he has gone big time in terms of his budgets and its films. It's his work that allowed indie films to really hit the festival circuits and get more popularity, in addition to others. He wasn't the only one, but you get my point. But with that said, I do think Tarantino is the one where it's most shocking that he hasn't won a director award, specifically because, as I'll get into in my 2 minutes, the years in which he made the films in which I think he actually had the best chance of winning the award, I do think he did a better job directing those films than the people who actually won in those years. And so when you actually stack up the specific films he had the best chance of winning for against who did take the award home, I think it is very shocking that he has not won an award yet.
All right, that's going to be end of your time, Aaron. Henry, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
All right, everybody. So I want to kind of break some news for you guys. Alfred Hitchcock has not won a Best Director nomination. I know, that's shocking. And that's why I'm going to showcase these films. Not only was he nominated for, but films that he also should have been nominated for and have held up to the test of time. So his 5 nominations for Best Director were Psycho, Rear Window, Spellbound, Lifeboat, and Rebecca, which did win Best Picture. Psycho is a film that lost Best Director to The Apartment, which, if you were being honest, that movie's a rom-com, and sure, if we're going to give any Oscar, that maybe screenplay, maybe leads, but in terms of the direction Psycho is what we talk about today. No one talks about Billy Wilder's direction in The Apartment. We're talking about Rear Window. I would give you anyone $100 if you can comment below who won Best Director for the year that Rear Window lost Best Director. Then I'll definitely give you that. And then the other ones, I'll give you that. Spellbound lost to It's Wonderful Life, Lifeboat, The Lost Weekend, which at that point that movie's boring, but it is what it is. And Rebecca Siskane, so I'll give you that. So Hitchcock not only has those 5 Best Director nominations, but he also has movies that he should have been nominated for: North by Northwest, Vertigo, The Man Who Knew Too Much, Dial M for Murder, Stranger on a Train, Rope, and Notorious. I almost ran out of time because that's how many movies he should have won for.
All right, we're going to keep it going fast. Aaron, right over to you whenever you're ready.
Because I want money. I believe he said, was it Rear Window was the one you said? You can actually respond to me. Was it Rear Window was the one you said name the director?
Yeah, without Google.
No, I know. It's Ilya Kazan for On the Waterfront, because that's an excellent film. But with that said, excuse me, Quentin Tarantino, to my opinion, the 2 films that I think he had the best chance of winning Best Director for were 1994's Pulp Fiction, which is obviously a revolutionary film in terms of storytelling, in terms of it literally revitalized careers. More specifically, it revitalized John Travolta's career. It brought Samuel L. Jackson for the first real time, outside of being in a Spike Lee film, into prominence as a star, which I have debated before. And I think that it is one of his best films. I think it's a masterful stroke in both screenplay writing and direction to take a film that, when put in sequential order, does make a lot of sense, rearrange its order, and still have its story make sense and have its themes connect by the end. The other one is 2009 for Inglourious Basterds. I do think that is an incredibly well-directed film, and I think that movie works because of his direction of it. In those respective years, in 1994, he lost to Robert Zemeckis for Forrest Gump. I do think that the direction of Tarantino over Pulp Fiction is a bigger achievement than Forrest Gump. I don't think it's crazy to say that, looking back on it, the fact that Forrest Gump won Best Picture and Best Director is a little more divisive. If it's not Tarantino, then we're going to be looking at Shawshank. However, I think the reason that Tarantino should have won that year for directing is because, again, when you talk about the structure of that film and what he pulled off in terms of making a movie that is that convoluted, we talk about Nolan with Memento. Well, Memento gets its basis from Pulp Fiction. In terms of Inglourious Basterds, 2009, Catherine Bigelow won for The Hurt Locker, and while I do agree that she should have an Oscar, I think it should be for Zero Dark 30, not for this movie. The fact is, The Hurt Locker is a fine war film, whereas Inglourious Basterds is a really enigmatic war film that is carried by performances that are directed by Quentin Tarantino to make that film what it is.
Time. Henry, right over to you whenever you're ready. We'll keep it rolling.
All right, so to his credit, it's a blind round. That was an oversight. If you want to knock me for it, that's fair. On the Waterfront is a fantastic one, but that still doesn't knock the fact that the Hitchcock films are the ones you talk about years ago. Obviously, Hitchcock has more time to really have all these movies, span over time and hold the weight within the time, and Tarantino's films. But the difference with Tarantino's film is I actually disagree when it comes to the question of the question is never won a directing Oscar. I really think Tarantino's direction is actually what brings him down. If you think about it, he's more he really relies on his style. And if you look at other directors that rely on their style, like Edgar Wright, Wes Anderson, even Paul Thomas Anderson, even though the one that he probably should have won for There Will Be Blood is the least stylistic film, you look at directors like that, it showcased that the style is what really brings it down. The reason he didn't win Best Director for Inglourious Basterds is because the over the top third act, and that's what really brings down, because those are his directing choices. Sure, there's a lot of fun and entertaining to watch on a rewatch aspect. When we're talking about Best Picture, that's what brings down. Same thing with Pulp Fiction. It's one of those where just everything that you have in that movie of dealing with the time, and it's kind of confusing. You don't know the narratives. You're like, oh wow, Bruce Willis, John Travolta, I thought he was dead in that scene. And that scene is one of those things where you're just dealing with the times, and those types of movies just don't get it because the direction is real confusing. You look at Forrest Gump, that movie holds up to the day in terms of direction. Robert Zemeckis showcased that he's a fantastic director of handling all the different time periods of spans of Forrest Gump's life. When you look at Alfred Hitchcock's filmography, like I said, when you think of Alfred Hitchcock, you think of Psycho, you think of Rear Window, and you think of Vertigo, which he wasn't nominated for, and that's arguably one of the movies that is his most famous for. North by Northwest, handling a spy movie with different twists and turns. Dial M for Murder, one of his best scripts of all time, that would have come off as like a play movie, but the fact his direction of handling the camera work and getting the actors of really showcasing the words that are on screen just showcase that. Notorious, a spy war drama that showcases the different actors and how they're handling that with Ingrid Bergman. It's Alfred Hitchcock is one of those. He's literally called the master of suspense, not the master of style like Tarantino.
All right, thank you very much. And then 4 minutes for you guys whenever you start speaking.
Go ahead.
In terms of discussing Tarantino's style, I don't think that that's necessarily a detriment, because I think if his style specifically for him was a detriment, I don't think he would be considered as often as he has. He's had multiple directing nominations. Whereas there are directors that you've listed. This is a blind route, so I didn't fact check everything, but I don't believe PTA has ever had a directing nomination, or if he has, it may have just been for There Will Be Blood. I don't know if Wes Anderson has ever actually had a directing nomination either. So the fact of the matter is, you're comparing him to directors that he is the standard above. Again, somebody please fact check me. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But you're comparing him to directors that are technically a standard below him, I would say. Whereas with Hitchcock, I would argue that the master of suspense thing is one of the things that does go against him. As we've addressed back in the day, the Oscars didn't really acknowledge genre films, whether that be horror films, sci-fi films, generally anything that wasn't a drama or comedy of some kind. It was very, very hard to get recognized. I think the fact that Hitchcock did get 5 nominations, some of those which were those genre films like Psycho or Rear Window, is an achievement in and of itself. And yes, while it's a shame that he did not win, when you look at it within the context of when he was directing films, it is much easier for Tarantino to win because of the acceptance of them now than it would have been for Hitchcock then, and thus it makes it more shocking that Tarantino hasn't won.
Yeah, so the difference of bringing up the directors like I said, Wes Anderson, PTA, and Edgar Wright is when you think of that, Wes Anderson was nominated for Budapest Hotel, and PTA was nominated for Licorice Pizza, There Will Be Blood, and Phantom Thread, movies that rely on substance when they're really should just be telling a really good drama story, similar to like Forrest Gump. Like I said, Tarantino's style over substance really hurts him, especially in the movies that he was nominated for in Hollywood, Bastards, and Pulp Fiction. Because if you think of the third act of Hollywood and Bastards, it really denigrates what you're looking for, because you're looking over a big triumph of the Nazis and a good war drama, and it just becomes a over-the-top action bloodbath. And same thing with Once Upon a Hollywood. Everyone's criticism about that movie is the fact that they undercut the Sharon Tate storyline. When you look at Psycho, like you said, the fact that the master suspense was a downgrade on him, and that's what makes it more shocking. Because when you think of how these films held up for being quote unquote horror suspense movie, showcase that his direction is what made them stand the test of time. Tarantino's movies, similar to like Reservoir Dogs, Jackie Brown, Death Proof, and Hateful Eight, the ones that have the less style, they're the less memorable. They're the ones that people don't talk about as much. And Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, that's just a lot of action, and that's why it was nominated, because it's similar to these movies of the third act.
I don't understand how you're saying that his style is both the praise and a thing. It's almost as if you're saying his style.
Fanfare.
But it almost seems as if you're saying the style is the thing that gets him nominated, but it's also the thing that stops him from winning.
No. The style is what makes these movies popular. The style, but in terms of the style, that's what knocks it down from from him winning, and that's what separates him. And I feel like that's what hurts him as a director. As a writer, he's a fantastic writer, and then most people really like the writing of these movies, but the direction is what stops it. Like I said, the writing of Sharon Tate's character in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was good, but the direction of the storyline and how they really ended up culminating in the third act is what's similar with the Nazis in Inglourious Bastards, and same thing, everything with Pulp Fiction, because you made a stylistic choice of like, what are we going to do? And you brought up Memento, and it's one of those. Memento, same thing. It didn't get nominated for that, or didn't win, at least for the same reason. Like I said, everything with Psycho, with Alfred Hitchcock, not only did he have his 5 nominations that he should have won at least 2 of them, if not 3, he also wasn't nominated for 7 movies that obviously stood the test of time and are considered some of the greatest movies of all time. Tarantino is one of those directors that works today, but in terms of 100 years from now, I don't know. Clearly, Hitchcock stands the test of time.
I mean, Hitchcock hasn't been gone 100 years, so I think to say that Tarantino couldn't also stand 100 years, I think is a little insane, because I think for how little his career has lasted compared to Hitchcock, I would say some of his films go above what Hitchcock's reach has been, especially when you look at anything besides Psycho.
Time. Thank you to both of you. I'm going to go ahead and go back to Aaron for your 1-minute closing debate.
Again, I'm not going to entirely disagree with you that Hitchcock should have won an Oscar. He probably should have in his career. But again, Hitchcock was a director where the bulk of his great work is he is the master of suspense. The bulk of his great work comes in horror, and it comes in thriller genres, things that weren't really recognized by the Academy at the time that he was directing. It's a shame that he didn't win, but I think it kind of makes sense when you look at the time period that he didn't. Whereas Tarantino directing in a period where he is the person that helped advance the idea of creative filmmaking and doing these insane things at the end of movies. And we have seen movies that take that exaggerated approach. I mean, look at last year's winner in The Power of the Dog, for how calm and very serene's not the quite word, but for how calm that movie is. The fact that it ramps up at the end and ends with this almost not really a twist, but more just this character reveal. I think that movies that have this insane ending and the style to them can absolutely win. And I think that's why the fact that Tarantino is the originator who kind of brought that into Hollywood, it is more shocking that he hasn't won an Oscar in the modern day.
All right. Thank you very much, Aaron. Harry, 1 minute for you when you're ready.
So Alfred Hitchcock's title of The Master of Suspense really only stands, if you look at his filmography, only one movie is a horror movie, and that is Psycho. If you look at the other movies that have the thriller genre on it, similar to Rear Window, that's towards the third act where it has that thrilling thing, but it's not style or substance, it's really plot-based, really earns it. You have movies like Spellbound, which is it's a drama. You have Lifeboat, which is a war drama, and a fantastic one at that, with it's really pretty much in one location, and Alfred Hitchcock's able to stand a very captivating movie that literally stands in one location of the boat with just a few actors, and he was actually nominated for that for a reason, because of just his fantastic direction. And Rebecca, that once again, it's just a drama mystery, and it's one of those things where he showcases that he's able to tell these dramas in such a well directed way that they come off as thrilling because of how well he works with the camera and how well he directs his actors. If you look at Tarantino, like you said, you kept bringing up Samuel L. Jackson, but guess what? Samuel L. Jackson pretty much does the same thing in every single movie, because of the reason that Tarantino doesn't really need to direct his actors. He's just going to worry about the style and not really the substance.
All right. Thank you very much, Henry. We're going to go drop you guys by the back and bring forward our judges and myself. Just some quick fact checks. For Paul Thomas Anderson, he was only nominated for Best Director for There Will Be Blood, Phantom Thread, and Licorice Pizza, while Wes Anderson was only nominated for Best Director for Grand Budapest Hotel. Neither of them have won any Oscars, it looks like. That being said, we'll go over to you judges. Ryan, who gets your point and why?
I will be quick on this one. Well, it's going to be very simple. My point is going to Henry, mainly for one reason. When that hammering nail on Tarantino's style, especially on Tarantino's change for the third act, he builds a very strong hill for Aaron to climb over, and he was able to do it in the closing, but it was pretty much a very big hill that he couldn't be able to reach at first. I mean, that's pretty much one of the things that gave Henry the point for me.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We'll go over to you, Mr. Allen. You get your point and why?
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. I mean, Henry kind of solidified it when he said, the master of suspense versus the master of style, and and Aaron couldn't really. I wanted him to more pull out, the substance in those films, in Tarantino's films, and he really didn't. He tried to a little bit, but it didn't really work out as well. So I'm going with Henry too.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We're going to drop you guys back to the back and bring back our competitors. Welcome back, everyone. Great match going on. We're going to move over to our blind round question number 2. Which streaming service has the best original content? And these two gentlemen are going to take it away. I'm not going to banter too much. I'm just going to let them take it away. Henry, it's going to go over to you for 1 minute whenever you're ready.
All right, so I know that me and my opponent can agree, objectively, the fact that our original content for both of these streaming servers are better for TV series, but in terms of movies, we're working with what we got. It's a blind round. So I pitch HBO Max because if you think about it, Justice League is the best movie of this. Zack Snyder's Justice League is the best one of this entire bunch that you're going to talk about, but you also have movies like No Sudden Moves, that is a fantastic crime thriller with fantastic performances, and it's one of those, if it didn't for some reason get dumped out in the beginning of the year, probably because HBO was experimenting with their releases, it probably would have been nominated because it's Steven Soderbergh. That's just what he does. It's one of those movies that's going to become underrated as time goes by. You also have the thriller Kimmy, which is kind of a play on of the genre of Zoe Kravitz's character with her OCD / germophobicness with dealing with the pandemic. And if you look at the ratings, honestly, it's one of those ones where people are like, we don't really want to be hit over the head of it. But you actually look at what this movie represents. It's a movie that is well directed, well acted, and it honestly is going to, once again, become underrated as time goes. You have 8-Bit Christmas, another fantastic, movie that's going to, show the test of time during the holiday season.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Aaron. Sorry, not Aaron, Henry. Aaron, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. So I went with Disney Plus, and again, obviously it's the blind round, but this is an answer that I would say for the most part I do stand by. When it comes down to it, I think. First off, I disagree with you about the Zack Snyder's Justice League point. That movie's fine, but to say that it's the best movie of either of these services, I think is a little extreme. And I'm probably going to say something that's going to hurt me, but I would argue that your streaming service probably does have the best movie of either of these two, but it's not one of the ones you've mentioned. Really, all you did was talk about how good Soderbergh's films are, and Soderbergh is a good director, but if that's all your streaming service really has, then that's not a thing. Disney Plus, meanwhile, has a more diversified bit of content, but the thing that it also has over HBO Max is the fact that it creates family-friendly content, and there's varying levels of that family-friendly content. There's things that are a little more mature. There's things that are definitely a little more kid-friendly, but the fact that it creates content that you can watch for all ages, and I think overall it does have a stronger library than HBO Max.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Henry, right back over to you for 2 minutes.
Okay, so yeah, it's one of those things you work with what you got. When you have a HBO streaming service that's has Warner Brother and you lock in with a director, of course you're gonna have someone who brings in movies. But like I said, Zack Snyder's Justice League is one of those ones that it's people literally watched a 4-hour cut of a movie because not only because they've been waiting so long, but because of how fantastic it is. It's one of those things that it actually benefits from being on a streaming service because you're able to digest that 4-hour runtime with all that. And like I said, everything with No Sudden Moves and Kimmy, yes, Steven Soderbergh is one of those things, but the fact that you have a movie, a director that showcases that, it proves that he literally trusts HBO Max to handle his movies. Now let's actually talk about Disney Plus. Let's talk about some movies that are not only clearly not your best, but arguably some of the worst movies of all time already. You have Cheaper by the Dozen remake, and you have Home Sweet Home Alone. These are two movies that are a disgrace, not only for the audience, the family that you're saying. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of families that are going to probably break up and be mad at their parents for making them watch that movie. And it's one of those things that parents are going to be mad at their kids for making them watch the movie. So it's one thing. It's gonna divide families. You have movies like Flora Ulysses and Lady and the Tramp and Noelle that are trying to be cute and family friendly, but actually that's what knocks it. And the fact that it shows that you're trying to have that widespread family element. It just doesn't really hit home, like you would want from that theater element. Because when you think of that family thing, you think of that going out and experience, or you think of the ones that stand the test of time. Like I said, HBO Max is one of those ones that it's owned by Warner. So you also have movies like American Pickle, which is a movie that is just a lot of fun with Seth Rogen and showcase that you can be weird and you can be a little artsy and you can trust actors like Seth Rogen to go out of his comfort zone. You have documentaries even, which if we don't accept those fair, but you have LFG that is just one of those documentaries that is just it's arguably going to be one of the best of the 2020s and it's going to stand the test of time. So if you look at HBO Max as a whole, it has a higher highs and definitely not as low of lows.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Aaron. I keep doing that. You're not Aaron, you're Henry. I keep meaning to say Aaron's going next. That's where my brain's going. I know your name, Henry, I promise. Aaron, over to you whenever you're ready.
It's all good, man. It's late. We're tired. All right. So if you want to talk about low of lows quickly, let's talk about HBO Max, because first off, American Pickle's fine, but it's one of the most mediocre Seth Rogen films to come out in the last 10 years. I also think that this has, directors who are names, but you're not getting the best out of them. The Witches is a Robert Zemeckis remake that really doesn't need to exist. Superintelligence is the latest offering from Ben Falcone and Melissa McCarthy, and it's just as good as the other ones they've made if you've seen their movies. If you want to look at Lockdown, that is a Doug Liman movie that is basically centered around the concept of trying to commit a crime in the pandemic, and it's honestly a sad attempt at the Soderbergh films that would come out later on the streaming service. And again, when we're talking in depth about films on your service, the only two you've really been able to go that deep into is the Soderbergh films. So if that's all you have aside from Zack Snyder's Justice League, again, that's not really a lot to bolster. Also, you want to talk about my service having cheaper by the dozen. Yours has Father of the Bride coming out, which honestly doesn't look all that great, so those fall pretty much into the same thing. Now I'm going to give you a list of diversified Disney Plus films that are good. First off, we have Togo, which is basically live-action Balto starring Willem Dafoe. It's a really solid movie, and it's a really well-told, based on a true story movie. We have Timmy Failure, Mistakes Are Made, which is based on a kid's book. It's directed by Tom McCarthy. Yes, the guy that did, oh my God, I forget what the movie's called, Spotlight. And it's honestly a really sweet movie about just a kid and his imaginary polar bear going around and solving mysteries. It's not something that should succeed, but it has a really cute heart to it. You have the filmed adaptation of Hamilton, which obviously took audiences by storm last year. You have Phineas and Ferb, the movie, Candace Against the Universe, which reboots one of Disney's most successful animated series and continues to be just as good as it was back then. You have Soul, Luca, and Turning Red, the three latest offerings from Pixar, all of which, especially Soul, are up to the standard of Pixar's latest offerings. You have Better Nate Than Never, a musical that came out earlier this year that received really positive reviews from the guy who made High School Musical. And you just have Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, which just came out and is being hailed as the new Roger Rabbit.
All right, and time. 4 minutes whenever one of you starts speaking.
So I want to strike the one movie you said from the record, since it hasn't come out yet. That's just guesswork. We can't use that against it. And I want to bring up once again, if we're talking about documentaries, the Harry Potter reunion. Once again, if we're going to count it, it's fantastic. It's arguably one of the greatest things you ever showcased, and HBO Max did a great job of representing the eras of the Harry Potter franchise. You have Unpregnant, a nice comedy drama about dealing with the pregnancy in the teen eras. It's going to once again stand the test of time. You talk about the Dale and Chip, and it's one of those things that it's over reliance on the member berries, and honestly that's everything that we're getting from the Disney Plus. It's either one of those, I was like, oh, it's a fine little cute thing that I can put in the background while my kids suck their thumbs, or you can put something on like Dale and Chip and it's like, oh yeah, remember the other stuff, like you said, you talk about it's the new Roger Rabbit. It's like it reminds you of Roger Rabbit. It's not actually great in its own right. It's not technically original. Same thing with all your Pixar stuff. It's one of the things, it's Pixar's name, not really Disney Plus, and it doesn't really stand out on its own right.
Okay, first off, to launch at that, you clearly haven't seen Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers if you think that movie is just member berries. That is, in fact, a really well-made movie coming from the Lonely Island, and the member berries that are in that movie, first off, there's so many that they are blink and you miss the moments, but they are also a part of the story. It's not just member berries for member berries' sake. Forgot, you know what, by the time that this actually airs, it'll be way after the movie came out. I apologize for anyone in the back if this is a spoiler, but for God's sakes, they took the meme of Ugly Sonic from the 2020 movie and turned that into a character. These aren't just member berries and pop culture references. They are entwined into the film in the way that Roger Rabbit is. Secondly, again, discrediting the fact that Pixar has movies go to Disney Plus. At the end of the day, that's Disney taking some of the best work that they have and putting it on Disney Plus. And after a 2010s that was filled with mediocre movies and sequels to their previous films, Soul, Luca, and Turning Red back to back to back are three incredible original offerings that are a part of the Disney Plus library. And those aren't the premium films they made you pay for. I'm not even counting the fact that they got those. I'm talking about the fact that these are movies that just for owning the service, you got to watch these incredibly made original Pixar films that tell these really personal stories, and they offer representation to communities that previously didn't have them, like Soul talking about jazz music and the experience of African Americans, or Turning Red talking about teenage girls and dealing with their problems. It's unique ideas that this service is dealing with, despite the fact that it is kid oriented technically.
And I love I love that you're throwing out these ones that are the quote unquote Pixar titles, because that's Pixar's a clickbait word. But think about it, the reason that they went straight to streaming service and not
Pixar.
into theaters is similar to like Toy Story 4 should have gone straight there for that same exact reason, but it went to theaters because it was worth it. These are movies that are fine. Like I said, they're cute little movies that just handle storylines that are just not as memorable. Like I said, so you want to knock me because they keep mentioning up Kimmy and No Sudden Moves because it's Steven Soderbergh, but that doesn't matter. It's a director who made two fantastic movies that are at the top for a reason. You have Zack Snyder's Justice League, that is arguably one of the best superhero movies that we've seen in the last 5-10 years. And like I said, you keep negating the fact of all your negatives. You have Home Sweet Home Alone, and you have Lady and the Tramp, and you have all those types of movies of that. It's just bad movies, like terrible. Even the ones that you mentioned mine are like, they're throwaways. So like I said, most of your movies that I'm saying are like at the top are the meh movies, and the ones that you're saying are the bad are the meh movies. Whereas, like I said, my highs are higher and your lows are lower.
Sure, my service has a couple of really bad movies, but my service has also put out more content than yours, and I would argue that the highs are higher. Let's also talk about the fact that I'm at least able to go in depth on more than just 3 movies, and I wouldn't even say 3 for you because you're not really talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League. You're just saying it's one of the best superhero films.
Disney Plus it's one of the more popular ones. I wanted to show light on the lower ones for a reason because it's one of the more popular ones. Come on, don't low blow like that.
The point that I'm saying is I've been able to point out more about most of my films than you have the ones that you've mentioned, which means I've actually watched the films on my service.
And time. All right. I believe we're going over to Henry for a 1-minute closing debate.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, if we're going for beat for beat of the top, we both have about 4 or 5 that we win for. Like I said, I have Justice League, No Sudden Moves, Kimmy, and 8-Bit Christmas, and he mentioned 2 or 3 Pixar movies and Dale and Chip. Those are 4 for 4. Maybe you said the Togo, but you even admit it in your saying that it's fine. It's a decent little movie that whatever. So when you, like I said, when we're thinking of the bad, you were able to mention one, and honestly, you only were able to throw it as because it's the Miss McCarthy and her husband one that just, hey, it's similar to the other ones, and you're probably being assumptuous with that. I was able to mention Home Sweet Home Alone, Noelle, Flora and Ulysses, Cheaper by the Dozen, Lady the Tramp as your bottom tier ones. And the fact that yours are the bottom with the IPs, it makes it even more disrespectful. Even my bottoms are like throwaways, like, you gave it a shot. Yours are like, wow, I can't believe they did that. And it was a waste. It was literally a slap in the face. So like I said, our highs are about the same and mine are higher and your lows are way lower. And honestly, my lows are about where your mids are, which is pretty close to your highs. HBO Max is a movie that takes more chances. Yours is a lot more safer, and it's not going to be memorable in time.
And time. Aaron, you're 1 minute whenever you're ready.
If you want to say that my lows are lower, then whatever, that's fine. And if it loses me the battle, then so be it. But the fact of the matter is, when we're talking about actual films that are good on this service, you can't, like, you really haven't been able to talk about any more than just 3 films. Whereas in addition to the obvious ones, the fact that you're taking 3 really excellent Pixar films and just throwing them out as the Pixar movies is fucking blasphemy. And first off, they did not go to the service because they're not worthy. They went to the service because of COVID spikes over the last 2 years, and Disney didn't want to send them to theaters at times when kids could have potentially gotten sick for being in a theater. So that's why they went to the streaming service. And secondly, I would argue that Disney Plus has more movies that maybe they're not brilliant the way you say that No Sudden Move is, but you have movies like Better Nate Than Never and Sneakerella that just came out. You have movies like Togo. You have movies that are really, really good and make up a base where you could string together 3, 4, 5 movies that are really good that HBO Max doesn't have.
And time. Thank you very much, Aaron. I'll have you guys drop to the back and bring up our judges. Welcome back, everyone. The only thing I'm going to say is no one brought up the shit show that was Artemis Fowl. That's all.
God. Why did you have to remind me that existed? I successfely erased it from
I think that was for a reason, man. No.
Yeah, that was low. That was low, man.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alan, whatever you need. Who got
these guys were back and forth this whole time. I was really, really impressed with this for a blind round. The passion came out almost more than other prepared questions for this, but slight edge. I'm gonna give it to Henry.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Jen, we're gonna go over to you. Who gets a point
Oh
one?
God, this is tough, and because I'm second, I'm gonna give the point to Aaron just to see how it shakes out on Ryan's end. But yeah, like I was back and forth the entire time, and for a long time there, Henry did have it for me because he was like stressing the fact that Disney Plus is dependent on old IP. But Aaron made a lot of good points of there's more content, and they just specifically he won me over essentially at the very end, stating that the Pixar movies are there not because they're lesser, but because of COVID, because that is true. So yeah, I'm gonna give the point to Aaron, but good luck figuring this one out, Ryan.
Ryan, are we going home? Do we get to have some sleep, or are we continuing this?
Objection, you're phrasing that in a way that is leading.
All right, I heard. In all realness, don't. We're not.
I was kind of hoping it didn't go to me because I was.
I know.
I'm kind of caught, but all right, going towards it. Well, we're good. We're good. We're going extra innings because I gotta give the points going to Aaron because Aaron did he fought back. He did. It was a lot back and forth, but the fact that his closing did really ultimately sold it into where the Disney Plus, yeah, it has a lot of content, and the films that most released, the most recent Pixar films, they were there because Disney was more focused on at least getting the product and content out there. And also, despite the lowest of the lows and the highest of the highs,
That's subjective. Yeah.
Yeah, it's subjective. And Aaron did say earlier, in his opening, Disney had a more stronger library of content compared to HBO.
But Henry does have a point that HBO Max does take more chances, and I appreciate that. So by all means, continue to do what you're doing.
Thank you very much for all three of you. We'll see you guys in the next round because it's going to be the speed round this time. So it's going to be a whole lot faster. The speed round works this way. It's going to be roughly the same amount of rules, except we're going to have less time. The first round is going to be the open debate as usual. We're going to have 60 seconds. The second round is going to be the rebuttal or further expansion on their point. That's going to be 90 seconds. And then they're going to have a final 45-second closing. There's not going to be a 4-minute debate round in this round. So the first speed round question,
hold on.
Okay.
Because
this question is, what box office flop of 2017 should have most recognition?
I forgot I was already prepped. I'm ready to yell my answer.
Special
flavor.
my heart. I was working in a theater this time, and I saw pretty much everything this year. So yeah, we're gonna go over to competitors. I believe, is it Henry or Aaron first?
Nope, me again.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
We're gonna go into the first speedrun question, which you guys already have. Aaron, you got 1 minute on the clock whenever you're ready.
So as we are recording this match, and I guess when it goes up, the aftermath of this match has it started yet?
Yeah, you're on. God damn it, you're on 50 seconds. Fuck.
Oh, okay, all good. I'll let the image load. But excuse me. So as we are recording this, we are in the build up to, and as this is releasing, we are in the aftermath of Top Gun Maverick. And this is a movie that when I spoke to people about, it coming out, one of the things that people were actually hesitant about was its director, a gentleman by the name of Joseph Kosinski. His previous big films include Oblivion and Tron Legacy, which some people love, some people hate, but most people think are just mediocre. However, he's a director that I was actually excited about because of his 2017 movie, Only the Brave. This is a small movie that came out. It made next to zero money. It had a $38 million budget. It made $26 million at the box office. And this is an incredible drama about firefighters fighting forest fires. It's based on a real story. And I think that this is the movie that proved once and for all that when given a good script, Kosinski can direct the hell out of the movie. And it's the reason people shouldn't be hesitant about Top Gun.
Whenever ready, go ahead.
All right, so I think the important thing about this question is it says box office flops 2017 that should have the most recognition. This is a question that comparing these two movies that I'm not only gonna knock this movie of just being fine, and it's gonna sound like, oh, that's actually building the case, but if it was like from a different year and that you're trying to compare the two, that'd be one thing, but it's from 2017. I'm choosing Blade Runner 2049, and it's one of those movies that if you look at it, and sure, it made money, but when you think of what it took to go into it, it was still a flop, and it's still considered a flop for a reason, and it's arguably not going to get a sequel like you would want because of the reason of the financial issues. The reason that Blade Runner 29 is should have the most recognition is because arguably it's one of the ones that is going to stand the test of time. Of you have directors like you have a director like Denis Villeneuve. I like how you're considering yours of being underrated, which is fair, and I commend you for that. But when the question is most recognition, not what should get more recognition, that's where you falter there. Blade Runner 2049 is a movie that is beautiful, well directed, well acted, and it's part of a franchise that a lot of people think is better than the original for a reason.
Time. Thank you very much. Aaron, I'll let you reset it, and you're going to have 1:30 whenever you're ready.
Okay, so to address Blade Runner 2049 first, you are right. This movie did lose the studio money, and it was technically a box office flop. But I feel like for what it is, it has received as much recognition as I think this movie probably could. At the end of the day, this was a movie that was made 30 years after a movie that is only really a cult hit. And it was given an overabsorbent budget that meant that it would have had to make way more money than it probably could have in order to succeed. In terms of actual people response, in the years that have followed, because it's a movie that's made by Denis Villeneuve, the movie has been seen by more people than I would say Only the Brave has, simply because it's the guy who made Arrival, the guy who made Dune, he had another movie, and I think more people are checking it out than you are giving credit for. So in terms of actually having recognition in the modern day, and we're basing this off what flopped in 2017, I think the fact that it flopped is more because it was too expensive, not because of anything to the movie itself. And I believe it is getting the recognition it deserves, and that it is a really great film, and people are seeing it because of the connection to Denis. Whereas something like Only the Brave is a movie that came out, it's a small movie, it didn't get the release that it probably should have, and it came out in a time where movies like this usually do well. The year before, in the exact same release slot, Peter Berg's Deepwater Horizon came out and did far better at the box office than this movie did. And the fact of the matter is, it doesn't have anything attached to it like a Denis Villeneuve that would make people want to go back and see it as of yet. However, I think that it's a movie that deserves that recognition because it is so good, because of its performances, and it's an underrated drama just because it wasn't seen at the time.
All right. Thank you very much, Aaron. Henry, you got 1:30 whenever you're ready.
And like I said, I think it's important to actually pay attention to what the question says. What deserves the most recognition? Not what deserves more recognition, not what is underrated, or not what is technically overrated, which maybe we're going to say one Blade Runner 2049. The most recognition, essentially, what is the best of that year from the flops, and that is easily Blade Runner 2049. And you're actually selling my point of saying that it has the recognition it deserves at the top, whereas yours is still slowly climbing. So even if it kept on climbing, it's not going to reach the heights of Blade Runner 29 for a reason. It has Denis Villeneuve attached to it in terms of name, so it already has that. It has the direction, has the score. Got Roger Deakins his cinematography award finally. It had Ryan Gosling, who proved that he can act and hold a franchise, even though it's not going to get there because of the financial things. His abilities showcase that he can do it. Only the Brave is a movie like when you think of Miles Teller, it's like no one even thinks about that. A lot of people forgot that it's out. And I want to. The question says most recognition, not more recognition. So I commend you for trying to get it out there and have 2 or 3 more people see it of the 5 that have already seen it. But when you look at Blade Runner 2049, it's a movie that is arguably the best of 27, regardless of how much money it made, and especially from the question that says box office flop. Blade Runner 2049 is a movie that people are in competition of with the original, and that you can say that the original is a cult film, and that's fine, but that's why the new one, Blade Runner 2049, is a lot of people's favorites of the two because of that reason, that this movie is not a cult film. This movie is a mainstream film in the sci-fi. It's going to stand out the test of time. Like when you think of Denis Villeneuve, Blade Runner 2049, right there up with Arrival and Dune now, because it's new, is what you think of because of a reason. It is the best of 2017, not just of the flops.
And time. Thank you very much, Henry. 30 seconds to close whenever you're ready, Aaron.
First off, I disagree that it's the best of 2017. That award goes to Logan easily. Second off, I'm going to be honest with you. I hate the wording of the question because what the fuck is most recognition? In terms of a movie that flopped in 2017, the movie has continued to grow, continues to receive recognition. People continue to watch because of who is attached to it, and it is only continuing to grow and grow and grow. Only the Brave is a movie that deserves recognition. It's a movie that deserves to be seen. It's a movie with incredible performances from the likes of Josh Brolin and Miles Teller and Jeff Bridges, and it is not as known as your movie is.
All right, time. Thank you very much, Aaron. 30 seconds for you. Henry, 30 minutes would be way too long whenever you're ready.
Like I said, it's important to, regardless of how you interpret the question says the most recognition of the flops, and is easily Blade Runner 24. And like, once again, I commend you for attempting to get Only the Brave out there. But now that Only the Brave out there is the same director of Top Gun and Maverick, now it's actually going to get pushed down and no one's even going to think about it. When you look at like movies like Dune, you're like, wow, look at that, the cinematics that Denis Villeneuve brought to it. Let me also check out his other ones similar to Blade Runner 2049. And that's the reason. Like I said, it got Roger Deakins' Oscar. When you think of Roger Deakins as a person, you're like, wow, what movie won it? Blade Runner 2049. Oh yeah, that movie's beautiful. Let's go watch that. This movie is the best of it, regardless of what you thought about Logan.
Last question, OBS. The question is, what's the worst film directed by Martin Scorsese that features Robert De Niro? And these fellows have an answer. They're going to go ahead and explain that answer. Aaron, could you pull up the clock for me, please? Because I can't fucking do it.
Yeah, you're good, buddy.
All right. Henry, this time, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Hold on real quick.
Oh, get a view of that, ladies and gentlemen. Zoom in on that.
I was not going to say. I was going to say something, but I was going to say. All right, Henry, whenever you're ready.
All right, so when you think of Martin Scorsese, you think of his strengths of a director and as a person who not only makes different crime films, but also films with a specific actor, specifically Robert De Niro. So when you think of his films, which one does not stand out the most? And that is Mean Streets, because at that point, Martin Scorsese was still raw in his filmmaking, and Robert De Niro was honestly a bad actor. It's one of those things where if he didn't have, kind of the charisma behind the scenes, his actual acting abilities just doesn't hold the steam. The concept of Mean Streets of this movie, it's so simple. It's one of those ones where you can see where Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro are going to go, but they're nowhere near that because it's at the bottom tier of it. Martin Scorsese is a director that showcases his different one takes and his different style, as well as allowing his actors to really stand out and become, arguably some of the best performances of all time, specifically regarding Robert De Niro. And obviously this is a movie that just does not hold up, and it is clearly the worst because it's early in his filmmaking, and I granted that's a cheap shot, but if we're being real, that's just what it is. Mean Streets is the worst of the De Niro Scorsese collapse.
All right, thank you very much, Henry. Aaron, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
So the one that I went with for the worst movie directed by Scorsese featuring Robert De Niro is the one that is not only that I genuinely feel is the worst of this group, but I think it's also one of, honestly, Scorsese's worst films. And it's an example of sometimes a director is best when they stay in their ballpark. And that is for me, is the musical New York, New York, starring Robert De Niro and Liza Minnelli. First off, I just don't think Liza Minnelli is all that good an actress. I think she is the thing more than anything that breaks down this film. But secondly, at the end of the day, Scorsese is a director, and yes, people often talk about how a lot of his movies are gangster films, and Mean Streets is an early prototype of that. So maybe it means it's worse compared to something like Goodfellas, but it's not a bad movie. It's just an early movie. New York, New York is it's one of the few Martin Scorsese films that's actually been negatively reviewed. It does not have positive reviews, and it's just out of his wheelhouse to a point where it actively hurts his filmmaking.
All right, and time. Thank you very much, Aaron. Henry, minute and 30 when you're ready.
Okay, so in comparison of these two movies of Mean Streets and New York, New York, it actually showcases the fact that Robert De Niro has range. He actually learned to play the saxophone for this movie, and actually showcased that not only himself as an actor, he can be a part of this romance, as well as a little bit of life, and it's not so dark and dreary of the crime stuff. And exactly, it actually helps my point of you saying of a director should stay within their comfort zone. And honestly, that's the only reason that this movie was considered negatively at the time of its release, because it's just like, wow, that's not what we expected. There's even a movie later in the 80s of After Hours where it's like, oh yeah, we don't even think about that movie because it's just not what we expect from Martin Scorsese. But that doesn't mean it's the worst. When you actually and to even border that help my argument of what we do quote unquote expect from Scorsese and De Niro. When you look at Mean Streets, it's just at the bottom of it. The acting is poor, the direction is poor, the movie itself, it's just not that watchable. It's less than 2 hours and it feels like a lot longer. If you look at Scorsese's movies later that are over 2.5 hours, and they feel a lot shorter than Mean Streets because of the swift directing. and he's just not there. And like I said, it may feel like a cheap shot of hitting him where, you know, and it's early in his career, but honestly, if we're just being real, it's being real. If we're talking about Christopher Nolan, what is his worst movie, and we say Fallen, that doesn't mean cheap shot just because it's first. So Martin Scorsese, in New York, like I said, the relationship between Robert De Niro and Liza Minnelli, the chemistry is there. It showcases everything that we had in Taxi Driver of his creepiness, but on the flip side of the charm that we got from Robert De Niro and their relationship. Like I said, he learned to play the saxophone in this. It showed the range of him, and it actually showcases that. So maybe it's underrated, but it's definitely not the worst of their filmographies.
And time. Thank you very much, Henry. Aaron, same time as him whenever ready.
So first off, I wasn't saying that Scorsese had to necessarily stay within his lane, but Scorsese has a lane, and we're all very much aware of it. In fact, I think Scorsese can step out of his lane and still make an incredible film. In the last 10 to 15 years, he made both Hugo and Silence, both of which I think are incredibly great films. Silence particularly is incredibly underrated, and they are not what you expect to come from Scorsese. This, to me, is an example of a director stepping outside of their wheelhouse and it affecting the quality of the movie. The fact of the matter is, Scorsese is not well equipped to direct a musical. I don't think he works for the genre. He's not, in that sense, a Spielberg, who I think did adapt to the musical really well with West Side Story, but that doesn't mean it's a detriment for him stepping outside of it. And again, similarly so, Mean Streets, again, Harvey Keitel, I think, is very, very good in the movie. He is the lead of the film, and I think he is really excellent. If Scorsese's direction is a little amateurish, it is early in his career. I don't think that's a detriment, because New York is also early in his career, but I would say his direction in New York is worse because it's not what comes natural to him. And again, I wouldn't say these are necessarily the worst films of either of their careers. I do think Scorsese probably has one or two that are worse, but it's the worst that these two have done together. And I think the fact of the matter is, the highlights of Scorsese's work are usually films that feature De Niro, and this is the only one that stands out that is actually bad. It's not good. The fact that it's different has nothing to do with that it's not good. The fact that it's different means it enhances the fact that it's not good, because it is Scorsese working outside of his wheelhouse and not knowing how to adapt to it.
And we'll go ahead and call it time. Thank you very much, Aaron. 30 seconds on the clock for you, Henry, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so like I said, the earliness of Mean Streets, it's not specifically Scorsese's first film, because he had movies earlier, and Alice Does Live Here and Boxcar Bertha, so it's one of those where his direction could be there, but in the gangster thing, it's just bad. Robert De Niro is just bad, and so it's one of those where it's lower. If you actually look at it, maybe the dates were bad, but if you look at it, even though they're not the Oscars, New York had 2 BAFTA awards, one for soundtrack, one for costume design, showed that Scorsese knows what he's doing, but also Robert De Niro was actually nominated for a Golden Globe as well as Liza Minnelli for it because of their performance and their chemistry. It's fantastic, and the music is great.
And time. I don't think you can speak faster than that. Go ahead, Aaron, whenever you're ready.
Because we all know the Golden Globes are the standard of nominating great films in Hollywood, and they definitely can't just be bought out to nominate shit. That's absolutely what it is. Look, I think the fact that you're trying to say Mean Streets is a bad film is just ridiculous. The fact of the matter is, it's a very solid film. It's not his best gangster movie. It may be his worst gangster movie, but it's the prototype of what was to come. New York is a prototype for nothing in his career except in one of the few bad movies that he's made. I don't think that Liza Minnelli is very good in it, and my time is running out. I can see it there, even if I didn't bring it up. So, oh well.
I was going to say something, but you said it before I did, so that's time. Judges, same thing as before. Only say who won. Ryan, who you got?
Henry.
Alan, who you got?
Henry.
Awesome. Thank you very much, judges.
And your winner,
That
and
said,
defending champion, Henry Sanchez.
Aaron! God damn it, kid.
All right. Sorry, no.
Henry, great match there. Great, fantastic match. I loved watching it. It's got to feel great, not only becoming the champion, but proving yourself and proving to everyone else that you can retain it. How do you feel right now?
Yeah, so it's one of those ones where whenever I talk to people like after the fact, like, non-biased and like, not heat of the moment, most of the times I disagree with a lot of things. Honestly, the only one I actually disagreed in terms of like just where I thought I truly won was the first question. I actually thought I smoked them, but the other ones, I swear to God, it could have gone either way, and I would not have been mad. And that's coming from me, who usually hates the ruling whenever I get ruled against on a question, and it was only one of them that I disagreed with. So the fact that Aaron did a fantastic job. He once again, I say this all the time, both in debate and trivia, he likes to downplay himself as a competitor, but obviously he proves his facts. Me and him to have different styles. He comes with the facts, and I come with just the approach of just the thought process of a debate, and it just depends on how the judges latch onto that. But he did a fantastic job bring a lot of the facts. I was able to predict a lot of the facts he was going to come up with, so I was able to counter most of them. But there are a few that I just had no idea what he was going to go with, like that Bob Hoskins thing in the first question about the script. I had no idea about that, and even though I still think I won that question, that point really did make me nervous, because I did feel like that was a big thing of taking him out of that movie. So I commend Aaron a lot for his approach to this entire thing. I'm definitely curious to talk privately behind the scenes to see how he would have ruled each of them, because I know he's similar on me of where we disagree on some of the rulings, not like a lash on the judges, just as competitors, sometimes you think you won one, you're like, wow, I think I got that one. So I'm definitely curious to see what he thought. But shout out to Jen, Alan, and Ryan behind the scenes judging this. It was a mess trying to get it going, but you guys did a fantastic job. Noah, you did a really 99% great job. That's just a little behind the scenes joke right there. Shout out to you, and I can't wait to see just you watching and hosting these to see how much more you're going to improve, because when I played you, you're definitely a different player than what I see now and what I know you're going to become. So I love this game, and I'm definitely happy to represent it as a champion, and I can't wait to see what comes next, because I'm going to put my all out in there, and if the other debaters do the same, then I know we're going to put on a show regardless of the result.
Oh, I appreciate it. Well, I can tell you what's going to come next right now. The next challenger is going to be the winner between Chad Webb and Sean Hunter, which I believe you've beaten Sean Hunter before. How do you feel about either going against Chad Webb or going against Sean again?
It's going to be one of those ones where kind of what I just hinted at earlier of disagreeing with one of the questions. Even though I did beat Sean, there were two ones where I was legitimately furious, but under my breath, of ones that I just completely disagreed with the rulings because of Sean's passion. I definitely respect that, so I know I have to take an approach differently with that. And me and Chad actually talk about debating behind the scenes a lot, and I'm definitely curious to see if he gets it, because I know he loves it, and I know he's passionate about it. So if I beat him, I know I beat someone who's well deserved to be here, and if I lose to him, I know he earned it, and he's definitely a worthy competitor. So either way, I would love to have it, and I can't wait to see their match and see what happens.
It's going to be a good one, regardless of who's going to be coming against you. So thank you again for coming on. Great match. Loved watching you fight against Aaron. I hope you have a good rest of your night, and congratulations once again.
Thanks, buddy.
No problem. And bring in your unfortunate loser for today, although I'm pretty sure he's kind of relieved somewhat.
Yeah, I'll take it.
So,
I'll take it.
Aaron, how do you feel about that loss? It was a pretty close loss. I can't feel too bad about it.
No, listen. I've said, I honestly, all in all, like, considering when we initially put that first 32 together before it all fell apart gloriously one after another, and I stepped in to make up the numbers. I had never planned on competing, so for someone who didn't plan on competing, I think I've done pretty solidly, all things considered. Look, at the end of the day, I made it here, and I never did that back in the old days. I could never string more than one win together. So this time I strung 2 wins together twice in a row. No, listen, Henry's incredible, man. I think every single match we've played, the debate between us has gotten better. And I have no problem saying that he is better at this than me, because despite the fact that I feel like we have both improved every single time, no matter what, at the end of the day, he still pulls it out. And yeah, I mean, I've made the joke since day one, like the last thing I want is to win it. And I did mean that to an extent, but I feel like, as I've shown, even if deep down I don't want to be the title holder of a league that I run, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to show up. And if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But at the end of the day, Henry pulled it out when he needed to. And I, not to sound braggy, but I pushed him further than Joe did. And the fact that he still pulled it out even then, kudos to him, man. As the guy who produces the league, he has earned it. And as the guy who played him for it, he has earned it. So.
Exactly. And I think you set a strong example. Even if someone who doesn't necessarily want to win, you definitely show up with passion, and definitely show all the competitors that no matter what, you just got to show up with passion and play with heart. As of right now, you said yourself you're pretty much stepping down for the foreseeable future, and you're just planning on kind of hosting it and everything like that, setting up matches.
Yeah, my thing with this is I want, I'm not retiring. I'm not taking myself off the roster or anything. But my whole thing is I like putting this together to allow other people to play. I've made, multiple joking comments over the course of my matches of, oh, I don't like this or I don't like that. And at the end of the day, it's because I'm the guy who usually runs it. So if someone else is running the match for me, in all fairness sake, I really don't have a right to criticize you because you're doing a job that I honestly only make look easy because I've done it for so long. And you guys, every single person, what I think it's Kevin ran one, you and Jacob put together this one, and you ran this one. Jacob Barber ran one for me. Like all of you guys who have put in the work when I've had to compete, it is much appreciated. Henry did one as well, I'm pretty sure. It is much appreciated because it's a lot of work. It is. So I would rather just focus on that. I only stepped in and played to make up the numbers. And consider me, that's kind of how I'm at this point. If, there's a case where a competitor needs a match and there's no other opponent that makes sense based on record except for me, then I'll play them. But that was all this was in the beginning. And I said I was going to play until I lost. I did lose once, but it was in a position where I'd already previously publicly stated that whoever made it to that point would have a play-in for the championship. And so I stuck to the path. I made it here. And again, I think probably the more deserving person did win tonight. And so I have no problem putting myself in the back seat and letting the numerous other incredible competitors get into this. And I do have to say on the next title match, I'm incredibly excited because as of this point, the 3 competitors to compete in title matches, both myself, Henry, and Joe, all have prior experience prior to the rebooting of the league. Whoever wins this next match, they will be the first true out-and-out rookie who started last August to make it to a title match, and I'm very excited to see which one of them does.
It's going to be a very fun watch. Again, thank you, Aaron, for putting on the show and allowing me to do this and hosting all of this and recreating it and making it so that everyone can play. Great match. If you want, I can go back and are you gonna
close out the match, man? You ran this shit. Go ahead, end it out.
Thank you everyone for watching. Again, thank you to our judges for helping out. It was a very long night for us today, so thank you guys very much. Go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to the channel. We put a lot of content not only on Movie Battleground, but some other things as well. Some upcoming big matches next week, June 22nd. The Summer Invitational Tournament starts. There's going to be 10 matches, 11 players. The winner gets a chance token to challenge for the title anytime they'd like. I know it's going to be a hell of a time. There's going to be some really, really interesting matches going on. I know I'm in one of them. Sunday, July 3rd, the aforementioned #1 contenders match goes down between Chad Webb and Sean Hunter, and the winner plays Henry. So just stay tuned for that. It's going to be one hell of a summer. You guys are not going to be bored. Thanks to Henry. Not to Henry, Aaron. I'm getting everyone's names confused today. Have a good night, guys.